never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
Hey, as a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team. I would be very careful about slinging stuff. Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We are live on YouTube. I'm coming to you from a rogue Airbnb. Sam's in studio. Sam, how you doing, man?
Not bad, Steve. Not bad. How about you? It's a nice little setup you got there. You got a tree, you got a plant. It's all very
we got stuff.
Hard.
If someone walks in the door, you'll be able to see it. And someone let me know if someone's breaking in over here. Appreciate it. But and appreciate you bearing with me, not being in studio here. But Sam, it's week 2. We got a ton to talk about as always.
Yeah.
You ready to get into it?
A lot of games. Let's go.
All right, where do we start? Where do you want to begin? Let's go. How about the Colts with a win? We got to talk a little Anthony Richardson here. The Colts go 31-20 over the Houston Texans. Anthony Richardson starts out hot, 6 for 10 for 56 yards, plus 2 rushing touchdowns, but ends up leaving the game. Gardner Minshew comes in, only 4 incompletions along the way. Minshew plays a good, solid game. And the Colts, with their first win of the season, Texans fall to 0-2.
Yeah, very conclusive win as well for Indianapolis. Like this game, they got out to an early lead. They got it fairly well under control at halftime. Minshew looked good, never let it in danger of slipping away. And so much of the production, the yardage totals, that Houston had came late in the game when they're just constantly trying to peg back something. Just a bummer for the Colts for Anthony Richardson. I mean, he was looking very good to start the game, the kind of plays you expect him to make. One was, one of his touchdowns was just the kind of usual standard Anthony Richardson rushing play, but then they started getting creative with the running. The second touchdown, a bit of a kind of trick, like a fake end around, and then Richardson bails back out the other side, ends up with a fairly comfortable, not quite a walk-in touchdown, but pretty much. Then gets, a shot as he goes over the goal line, and it's one of those head bounces off the turf backwards type of deals, and out for concussion. So, we don't know if he'll be back next week. I mean, the good news for the Colts was Gardner Minshew came in and showed why Gardner Minshew is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, which is, there's that gray line between good backup quarterback and marginal starting quarterback, and those guys can win games, can play particularly well, can look good, and Minshew not just steadied the ship, but did a good job of maintaining everything that Richardson had already built early in the game.
Yeah, the other thing to add, I think, for the Colts, Zach Moss comes in, runs really, really well. Last week, they struggled with Deion Jackson running the ball. So, of course, the Jonathan Taylor saga and, him being out at least for the first 4 weeks. Zach Moss looked good, man. 7 forced missed tackles. And we always talk about when you have that running quarterback and you combine it with a tough-to-tackle running back, it does make the offense that much better. I think Zach Moss added that. And the other thing to highlight, too, that we all kept talking about during the preseason was the Colts offensive line. I think they've been, as we've expected at least, Sam, very solid up front from a run blocking and pass blocking in particular from that standpoint. And just to put a bow on the Richardson discussion, another week where he did the same stuff as far as going through reads, throwing to the right person for the most part. Accuracy wasn't, perfect again, but he does look very comfortable, I think, as far as running the offense. And as you mentioned, few new wrinkles coming with the run game. And, hope Richardson's back because we're starting to see what that Colts offense is capable of.
Yeah, he's really personifying that discussion that we had at draft time, which is he is not raw. He's inexperienced. He hasn't seen it all. Like, he just needs reps, but he isn't this crazy. Like, right now, Anthony Richardson looks less raw than Justin Fields, who's been in the NFL for 3 years. Like, he's further along in terms of quarterbacking development than a guy like Fields is, despite the fact that he's so little experienced. So the discussion around Richardson, I think, was always largely, not everywhere, a lot of people had this right, but there were a lot of people that had just the cliched version of what Anthony Richardson should be, given that he's barely started any games, in their minds, and he isn't that guy, and he's showing that already. The other thing to note about Zach Moss, by the way, not just came in, played well, all that kind of stuff, he almost didn't leave the field. No other running back got snaps. The only time he was off the field for one snap, like the offensive line and Alec Pierce all played every single snap of the game, which for them was 56 snaps on offense. Zach Moss and Michael Pittman played 55. So he was not on the field for one offensive snap, and no other running backs got snaps. So in this world of, well, who's going to get, the workload, who's going to be a by committee kind of guy, I mean, Zach Moss this week almost literally did not leave the field for them.
And you just never know when you can predict that. You have no idea when that's how a team's going to roll as far as usage goes. On the other side, the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud has now dropped back 116 times. So it's almost 60 times per game, 58 per game over the last 2 weeks. That's total attempts and sacks and all that. That's a ton. And obviously game flow is a huge part of it. Does feel like Houston's got to get back some semblance. I don't want to say the word balance, but certainly need to even things out a little bit where they're not just playing from behind, putting that much on CJ Stroud. And I want to say Stroud's, again, similar maybe to what we expected. Some of his in-rhythm throws, when it's there, just fantastic. Looks very good. It's anything outside of structure, outside of rhythm that, is a bit of a question mark for Stroud so far.
Yeah, I mean, given the situation, i.e. they were down for most of this game and he had to kind of do it by himself, they couldn't, it was going to slant towards that direction of, pass heavy. Game script got away from them type of thing. I thought he looked pretty good, actually, like way better than he did in his debut. The biggest problem was sacks, pocket awareness, all that kind of stuff looped together. It wasn't helped by the fact that his offensive line isn't as good as the one for the Colts. He's going to have, I think, a turnover-worthy play in there as well. It's the fumble, which I think that's kind of harsh, but once the pocket is collapsing on him, it's on him to make sure that ball is protected, but it was the second guy coming in that literally just punched it straight out. So, maybe that gets taken off him, but I think that it'll stay. Either way, like, that's the one glaring negative from his tape in almost 400 yards worth of production from a game script that was away from him very, very early in the game. I think that was quite an impressive sophomore game for CJ Stroud.
Nico Collins was his top target, 7 catches for 146. I couldn't tell the touchdown, which was a nice play by CJ Stroud, getting out of the pocket, and he throws the ball up. It looks like Nico almost intercepted it. Yeah. Pass intended for someone else. I think it's completed either way. But yeah, Nico Collins with a huge game. Nice catch and run for a long gain as well. And your boy, Tank Dell, gets into the end zone late.
That's right.
Look, game flow-wise, we don't want Houston. I don't think they want to play like this. But with Nico Collins, Robert Woods, get more Tank Dell in there, it's not a bad receiving core the way they've been playing.
Don't give me this. Nico Collins is his top target crap. 10 targets for Tank Dell, 9 targets for Nico Collins. Sure, Nico's went for more yardage, but whatever. Top target, the most targeted receiver, that was Tank Dell.
Yeah, you're justified there, Sam. Mm-hmm. Will Anderson with the very first pass of the game, quick win against Braden Smith at right tackle, and then not much else after that. I was like, wow, Will Anderson looking great right off the bat. Didn't create a ton of pressure. Again, going back to that Colts offensive line, looking really good through 2 weeks, and not what they were last year with all those injuries.
No, I mean, again, we're 2 weeks in. Some things we were saying all offseason are going to be quite clearly true already. Some things are going to be quite clearly wrong already. That feels like one that's going to be true from the outset. That offensive line for Indianapolis had no business being as bad as it was last year, and it was almost certainly destined for some kind of rebound now. Did you also see the flash of Will Mallory skills, tight end for the Colts?
Yeah, only 10 snaps, but yeah.
Got in there, made
Tell
some
everybody
plays.
about it.
Let's go. I'm just saying, Will Mallory flashing. Man's
Are
got
we back here?
ability.
You're just gonna call out everything that players that you like did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, good for you. You don't learn too many new skills, Sam. I know what to expect. But as a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family. How to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies, plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget. Quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes, and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes and at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Sam, let's go to Baltimore 27, Cincinnati 24. By the way, you did cover Thursday Night Football on Friday's show, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So
we did.
Look at this. We're like 2 games lighter this week because of the Monday night doubleheader, the Thursday night coverage already on Friday. So if you're looking for Vikings-Eagles, check out the PFF NFL podcast or show from Friday on YouTube. All right, so Ravens go to 2-0, 27-24. Cincinnati Bengals fall to 0-2. I was a little surprised by this, Sam. The second straight year, I remember that. They were 0-2 last year. But the Bengals have been 0-2 4 out of the last 5 years. Of course, last year, the Bengals did right the ship and get to the AFC Championship, but looking bleak after 2 weeks in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, the calf is flared up a little bit. In Baltimore, a ton of credit. Just a very clean game offensively. Lamar Jackson, the run game, the defense. Baltimore looking really good here at 2-0.
Yeah, I was just talking to Mike in the booth before we came on. Like, the fact that they're 0-2, obviously not good, but we've seen last year it's not a disaster. 0-2 in the division, I mean, that makes it worse. The fact that the 2 losses have come to Cleveland and Baltimore, that's not great. But honestly, the biggest problem is we've come out of that game and Joe Burrow has re-aggravated that calf injury to some description, right? We don't know how bad it is. We don't know how long it's going to keep him out, but that was an injury that kept him out basically the entirety of training camp. Now, sure, that was probably an overabundance of caution. Week 1 is the important date. Forget everything before that. But he was out a while, right? If he's re-aggravated that now, they're already in an 0-2 hole. Like, they can't afford to not have Joe Burrow for any particular length of time. So that, I think, that's the real concern for Cincinnati. Like, this has been a bad start to the season, which would not be catastrophic if you could rely on Burrow, because overall, the offense was way better in this game. Like, it didn't look the same as it did week 1. They were able to move the ball. All the receivers had reasonable days. They scored some points. They could have, should have maybe, been in this game in terms of winning it. Burrow had a bad red zone interception that probably really tipped the game towards Baltimore. But if that was the mood we were coming out of this game with, and Burrow's injury status wasn't a question, it would be, okay, on to the next game. We'll get this thing turned right. Now it's like, uh-oh, this is not good.
Yeah, it's one of those. Look, when we've joked about calf injuries on here, in part because I had a fake one time that put me on the injured list when I was a professional player. And so we joke about them, but all of our medical professionals do talk about how easy they are to aggravate. And again, Burrow got the calf injury, second day of training camp? It was very, very early in camp and was out for the majority of camp.
Also, he had already done something to it. Like when he did the one that was sort of on video and everybody saw and the real injury, his calf already had a sleeve on it. Like clearly it was something was at him already that he tweaked or whatever, and then it went in that first couple of practices in training camp. That kept him out until week 1, and now that same calf has been re-aggravated. So this is potentially effectively the same injury has been going on for 6 weeks plus. Like, that's a long time now to be one thing.
Yeah, it's not great in Cincinnati. And I'll say, you did say, hey, the offense kind of figured it out It was another slow start, though. I mean, we were almost halfway through the game. He's about 3 yards per attempt. Burrow, some of his best he had a great throw to Tyler Boyd that was dropped in the end zone. You mentioned the interception, just staring his receiver down in the tight red zone. Geno Stone, with a really nice break on the ball to pick it off. It's still not the Bengals offense that we expected. And you throw the calf injury on top of that. Not great for the Bengals right now. But I want to flip it to the other side in the Baltimore Ravens and give them proper credit. As I said earlier, another game where it's the new offense. And if you just looked at the stat line, right, you get your 62 yards from Gus Edwards, and Lamar has 54, and Justice Hill has 41. You add it all up, and it's like, hey, the Ravens had 178 yards on the ground. Lamar throws for 237. I thought Lamar looked really sharp. Again, there was another fumble in there where he held the ball a little bit too long. But I thought one of the stories of the game, the Ronnie Stanley hurt, the Ravens banged up front. Lamar is very well protected, and I thought he played a nice patient game in the pocket. I think his arm looks a little bit better. I go through these phases every now and again where a guy really rips it a couple times, and I look, man, Lamar's arm looks pretty good. He's zipped a couple in there, hit Zay Flowers on a beautiful 52-yard post. I think this was what the Ravens wanted with this offense, right? Spreading the ball around, and Lamar really facilitating extremely well from the pocket.
That Zay Flowers pass, I don't think Lamar Jackson gets enough credit for his arm strength generally. It's not in the, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen category, but it's in the next group down, right? That group of quite a few quarterbacks who have really impressive arms, but not absolute superhuman freak show strength. That pass to Zay Flowers, that was a 50-yard pass, a little bit more, 52, that literally hit him in the head on a frozen rope. It wasn't one with air put under it, let him run under it. It was like he was in pretty tight coverage on a post, and he just fired in a 50-yard pass that literally hit, he caught it hands against his face because the ball hit him there. Absolute bullet that hit his receiver exactly where it needs to be. And that was another week of, Zay Flowers making a lot of plays. I wasn't quite as dominant and obvious as week one, but Zay Flowers is impressing. And Nelson Aguilar out here making plays as well. They did have this spread offense, multiple receivers at all times, and Lamar's just back there dealing.
Odell Beckham Jr., I believe he got hurt a little late in the game as well. But yeah, you're right. Nelson Aguilar, you just never know which season he's going to show up, right? Remember 5 years into his season, Nelson Aguilar had 2 good years, and they were completely different types, one time as a slot receiver, one time as a deep threat. But yeah, Aguilar on the 17-yard fade for a touchdown. Really nice throw from Lamar Jackson there as well. So yeah, I think this was the type of Ravens offense that they were hoping for. Little Mark Andrews, a little bit from the receivers, a little running back, and Lamar running the show. And again, looking to pass first, running when he needed to. I think as far as concerns go on Cincinnati's side, just the lack of pass rush, right? The inability to get to Lamar Jackson with quick disruption, I think is just something to keep an eye on for Cincinnati. And not that Baltimore was great from that perspective either, but something to keep an eye on, I think, for Cincinnati and their defensive front. Moving forward here. Not
even just the pass rushing, the defense in general. I mean, they got handled in this game. Whatever about Joe Burrow and the offense and that not looking great. Remember, one of the touchdowns was a Charlie Jones punt return touchdown, right?
Right.
So the offensive production was a little bit worse than the scoreboard looks, but their defense gave up a ton of yardage, both in through the air and on the ground. DJ Reader was their best defensive lineman, I think, but one guy can't stop the run by himself. Everybody else got pretty much destroyed by that Baltimore offense. So, Cincinnati's defense we've become accustomed to viewing as one of the best in the NFL. Very good game to game, mixing things up, changing game plans. I mean, they were as far off the pace, I think, in this game overall as the offense was.
So Baltimore 2-0, commanding lead now in the AFC North. We'll see what happens with the Browns, of course, tonight. And Cincinnati, like I said earlier, 0-2 once again. And we've seen them bounce back before. They have the Rams coming in for one of 2 Monday Night Football games next week. got to right the ship pretty quickly here in Cincinnati, and all eyes on Joe Burrow's calf this week to see if we can get any kind of report and see if that's going to be something that lingers throughout the season.
And that Rams game no longer looks like an obvious W to put on the schedule the way they've been starting the season.
Have we talked to are we going to try to go to that game, Sam? We're going to go, right?
It's here.
Talk to Zach. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So we might be live tweeting right from the game. You never know.
God knows.
Shall see.
God knows we're not getting in via Cincinnati. Zach's the one that can get us in the building.
No. Sorry, press box is full here. Sorry for the PFF guys, All right, Buffalo Bills 38, Las Vegas Raiders 10. Just 6 days after the heartbreaking loss on a punt return for a touchdown, Buffalo Bills, they get back on track. 38-10 win here. Raiders move the ball early and then really nothing after that. This was an outstanding performance by the Bills defense. And once again, you'll see it when the PFF numbers come out and everything. A lot of times when you have a great defensive performance, it's, hey, the defensive line, they did this, they did that. It wasn't even a pass rush deal for Buffalo. They won up front. Their defensive tackles were outstanding in the run game against the Raiders, but just the Bills, the back end, not giving up big plays, winning up front in the run game, and then the Buffalo Bills offense looking completely different. Josh Allen, just 6, an average depth of target of 6. It was like, hey, maybe he got the message. I'll have more on that, but I'll let you react. Josh Allen not turning the ball over the way he did on Monday night this week.
Yeah, and the thing about the defensive performance was it didn't start off that way. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo and the Raiders marched straight down the field the first drive, put it in the end zone. You're like, ooh, that's kind of a slap to the face, and we'll see if that's actually going to, if Buffalo's going to wobble because of that. Or if that was going to impact Josh Allen. He obviously knew that he had to go into this game and not do what he did the last game, but would the fact that the Raiders just immediately score a touchdown and put the Bills in a 7-0 hole, you're like, uh-oh, does Josh Allen now feel that he's got to go be Josh Allen again? But no, this is why that game against the Jets was so frustrating, because this was the performance they needed from Josh Allen. Just go out there and don't do anything dumb. Take what's there, be conservative, don't be crazy. And, there was still a couple of hits or a couple of runs where it's like, dude, stop trying to hurdle safeties that know it's coming. Like, what? No, stop. He tried to hurdle, was a Marcus Epps, who was a former college teammate of his, which was probably a good thing, because if it had been anybody else, he might have, caught him in midair and launched him into the floor. But, dude, stop doing that. But yeah, this was the performance. It makes Monday night more frustrating because he's capable of doing this. But it's also exactly what they needed. The Bills are so good on both sides of the ball that most of the time you don't need anything like what Josh Allen is trying to do. You need this. You need just don't go crazy. And then when you do run into an elite, awesome team that are giving you everything you can handle, then let's tap into the Josh Allen well and start, pulling up the plays that we don't have any answer for on defense. That, this was what the version of the Bills that we, I think, expected to see and need to see for most of their games.
It's funny because, I'm looking through the stat line and I see the low average depth of target, and then I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, when was the last time he did this? How rare is this? And I was reminded, I actually had forgotten. Remember early last season, Allen was playing like this. It was against the Rams opening night. He was just underneath, taking everything, and then he'd go over the top once or twice when he needed to. And he did that, I think, weeks 1 and 2 last year. And we were probably saying, hey, why isn't Josh Allen throwing the ball down the field more? It was more, hey, he's playing game manager. They want him to do that. And then they'll, like you said, I like that, tap into the Josh Allen well when needed. So it's not like he hasn't done this before, I guess is my point. So it was 31 for 37, right? So he can make good decisions. He can, even the other night against the Jets, if you take away the 4 turnovers, he did throw the ball pretty well other than that. So he's capable of not going crazy and saying, look, double coverage, let's go. He's capable of doing it. And then the other thing to highlight is James Cook just having a huge game. So you get the Bills have a big drive before the half to go up 21-10, I believe it was. And then in the second half, it's like, all right, we're going to play with a lead here. We're going to run away with this. And that's where James Cook is breaking off some big runs, and Damian Harris finds the end zone, and they get Latavius Murray in there in the underneath passing. This was a game where, okay, we don't need Josh Allen to be the superstar. Maybe it's because it's against the Raiders, but you need more of these games if you're the Bills. And I want to see if they can James Cook be a huge contributor when they do have to play the Chiefs and they do have to play the best teams in the league. But this was the good, balanced, all-around offensive effort that you want to see from Buffalo.
Yeah, and balance is a good term because they spread it around a ton as well. Like they didn't, you could have also maybe not forgiven, but you could understand them wanting to go, oh, Stephon Diggs looked pretty pissed on Monday night. Let's feed him the ball a lot. Stephon Diggs had 7 targets, but so did Gabe Davis, who had a big game. One of his games that sort of makes you think he should be that secondary target to Diggs all the time. Dalton Kincaid had 6 targets. Dawson Knox had 5. James Cook had 4. So that's, 5 guys on the offense that had at least 4 targets. The ball was being spread around quite a bit. Yeah, you just come back to this idea of that's what makes that game by Josh Allen so frustrating, is he's capable of this type of game, which is the more relevant one to have in almost all circumstances, and certainly the more important one to have against the Jets in that game. Did you see also the play that Matt Milano made on defense?
I did want to highlight that Jimmy G's 2 interceptions. You described that one. I'll talk about the other one.
Well, Jimmy G essentially hits Josh Jacobs like in the face. Perfect pass, like right at him, straight in front of him, hands up to take the ball, and then Matt Milano basically just jumps over the back of him and just takes the ball over the top of his head. Just takes it away from him. I think they said on the commentary, he mossed him, which is kind of true, but Moss usually did that, deep down the field or in the end zone maybe. But Milano just did this like in the middle of the field randomly on a perfectly thrown pass to a running back in tight coverage that ended up being an interception.
You stole my line. I was watching with avid PFF NFL podcast listener Mike. I was over at his house watching the games yesterday, and he saw that play. He said, tomorrow morning, say Matt Milano mossed him. Make sure you do that. Quote me on that, and you already stole it.
Quote Mike.
Mike had one chance to contribute here. For the Jimmy Garoppolo EPA king, who's usually the beneficiary of either, Yak or his teammates' performance or whatever, not last week, but, generally, Jimmy Garoppolo's 2 interceptions, the one, again, where you said Matt Milano just steals it from Josh Jacobs. The other one, big, long Gregory Rousseau tips a screen pass. Terrell Bernard makes a really nice diving catch there. So, yeah, there was some weird interceptions in this game and some nice plays by Buffalo. And again, I just want to highlight Buffalo's defensive tackles, Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver had a huge game. He had a play where he just pushed the guard right back into the running back for a 4-yard loss. Josh Jacobs, what did he finish with? He had nowhere to run. He had 9 carries for -2. And that was Buffalo up front. One of the big questions coming into the year, who's going to play linebacker? Terrell Bernard had a really nice game in the against the run. So Buffalo, pretty dominant performance, as you said, after that first drive from the Raiders.
Yeah, 9 yards for -2 yards with 11 yards after contact. He had to gain 11 yards after contact to get a 2-yard loss overall.
And this was a week after Buffalo's run defense was the weakness, right? Zach Wilson comes in. They're still allowing an 83-yarder to Breece Hall. So I think Buffalo they ticked a lot of boxes in a big way, and reminding people, hey, we're still the Buffalo Bills, despite the disappointing loss and the one that we inflicted upon ourselves because of the turnovers.
Yeah, classic bounce back, week 2 game. Like week 1 was bad. It was disappointing. It was worrying, not because, Josh Allen is that guy every week, but because he's capable of being that guy at any given moment. But this was a week that showed, the Bills are still the Bills. Like it's, the reasons for concern were not, they're fraudulent, they're not going to be good this year. It was, that's a ticking time bomb. Like you don't know when that's going to go off, and that's the worry.
One last thing I want to highlight, Raiders' first-round pick, Tyree Wilson, another rough game. He's, supposed to be an upside project type of player coming off the foot injury, but no pressure, and he's had some issues in the run game in the first 2 weeks. Him and Trayvon Walker watch for me every week. Just fascinated by the NFL, loving those upside edges that high in the draft. Well, we're back with another week of football. DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw 5 down on any of this week's epic matchups and walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. This is for all customers. They can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football's more fun when you're in on the action, so download the app now and sign up with code PFF. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, with code PFF. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. All right, what else we got here for football games? It's tough on the one laptop. I don't have the multiple screens, bouncing back and forth. How about Atlanta 25, Green Bay 24? We called this the game of the week, Sam.
Discord.
The Discord called this the game of the week. They thought it was the closest 1.5 point spread when we picked it way back last Wednesday, and it was real close. But Packers were up 2, ready to cover at the end, but Atlanta gets the win, walk-off field or game-winning field goal, 25-24. And good on the Discord, saying, hey, this is the closest game, toughest one to call. You and I were going back and forth. How do you call it? It was a really nice NFC matchup. Atlanta goes to 2-0 here.
Yeah, no, it was a good game. And it was a fun game as well. Like, any game involving Atlanta is always going to be an entertaining watch because that offense is so unusual by design. I mean, the way it's set up with all these insane matchup weapons, but like helmed by Desmond Ridder, the whole thing is just going to be fascinating to watch in any given week. And Green Bay did their part as well. Like, flea flicker, play one, despite them not having their receivers. Like, one takeaway I think from Green Bay is that group is good, but they badly miss Christian Watson. Like, not having him there, it's the one guy that changes the dynamic because of what he brings to the table, which is that just absolutely absurd mix of athleticism and speed and size and all that kind of stuff. And when everybody else is a complementary piece to that, it's imposing. When everybody else is just, that's your offense, like that's your receiving core, it's like, all right, we've got some nice players here, but we're definitely missing a fairly significant piece of all this. But that flea flicker, I mean, number one, it was a cool play. Number two, those are the types of plays when you start sort of looking back and you look at yardage and, all those kinds of things. Like, those are the plays that get missed, right? Because defensive pass interference on A.J. Terrell, first play of the game, deep down the field, doesn't show up in any stats other than one next to the penalty column. But that's a big, deep, explosive play in terms of passing that just gets nullified and gets lost in all the scores. So, yeah, I mean, I was entertained by this game. I thought this was a fun game.
Let's talk a little bit more about that pass game, then we'll get to the Falcons and maybe some more Bijan love coming up soon. But Jordan Love, he's got another one of those stat lines. He throws for 3 touchdowns again, 113.5 passer rating, 14 of 25 for 151. It's another week. I don't think the grade is going to match that. I don't think it's going to be the grade was fine. I think, he had a dropped interception in there that's probably on the receiver. But you're talking about the young receivers. Hey, if they have Christian Watson there, you're feeling good. Dontavius Wicks turns like a 20-yard pass into a 32-yard touchdown, breaks away. So this is where some of the stats come from Jordan Love. You have Jaden Reed wide open in the flat. You have a tap pass to Jaden Reed for a touchdown. The young receivers are intriguing, Sam. I do love that for the Packers, but with Jordan Love, it did feel like early on, maybe a little bit too quick. The timing of the pass game was off at times, missed a few throws. They did settle down. I'm more impressed with the young receivers, but if they did have someone to tie it all together, I think it would be that much better for that Packers pass game. So Jordan Love, again, I think he was okay in this game. But again, if you look at the 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the passer rating once again this week, it might not really tell the whole story for Love because of the yak-induced touchdowns.
No, I really am impressed by that young group. Like, I don't want it to come off as, hating on that group. I'm just saying you put Christian Watson in there and you have something really good, actually. Like Christian Watson, Musgrave, Dobbs, Jaden Reed. Like, that is a very good group of guys, even though the most experienced of them is a second-year receiver. It's just that when you don't have Watson in there, it definitely does miss something and isn't quite at the same level. Yeah, like, Jordan Love is, at the moment... So I think, number one question, right? You're going from this ridiculous sequence of Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love in the course of, like, 35 years. The number one question is, like, is this guy a viable starting quarterback? Forget anything else. Forget, like, can he be the next Hall of Famer in the line? The number one question is, can he do this at all? I think we've already seen the answer to that is yes. Like, Jordan Love can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. He's already shown that in 2 games. The question now is, all right, how good can he actually be? That is obviously still an open question. We've only got 2 games, and in those 2 games, his production or the numbers have not necessarily tied directly to how he's actually been performing. I think there have been some good plays in both games. There's also been some negative plays in both games. So, right now, I think step one for them is answered. Like, he can be their guy. They don't have to panic. But it's just going to take time to work out, like, where he's going to land in the range of outcomes, particularly for a quarterback like him who is going to be stylistically volatile. Like, there are going to be some big plays and some bad plays in there as well. And those guys, it's always about the distribution. Like, what is the frequency of each one? Because that determines... Like, Josh Allen and Jameis Winston are in the same side of a spectrum of style of quarterbacks, right? But they're vastly different in terms of how good they are, because the frequency of the things that they both do at similar rates is different, right? And the frequency distribution difference can take you from being Jameis Winston, which is, this is so frustrating, I'm going to bench you and you're never getting a starting job back, all the way to Josh Allen, which is, you're still an all-pro caliber quarterback, even if every couple of weeks we're going to want to bang your head against a brick wall because of the idiot things you're doing. Like, so that's basically where we are with Jordan Love. Is we're just going to have to wait and see.
I thought Jordan Love had some good plays with his legs. A couple first downs, or a nice 24-yarder in there. The last pass that he threw in a comeback attempt, it's 4th down, hits Samori Toure over the middle. Toure kind of loses it on the way to the ground. That was one of the best throws of the day for Jordan Love. Mm-hmm. All I'm warning, this is what we do on the PFF NFL podcast, just warning people, if you look at, 3 touchdowns, no picks, it's like all 3 of those touchdowns were kind of schemed up or because of his receivers, and that's the thing that's influencing your perception of Jordan Love and his stat line, and I just think it's a little off so far. But Jordan Love hasn't been a disaster. I think he's been solid through 2 games. He's been okay, and yeah, like you said, there's more to see there. From a Falcons perspective, I thought it was, last week Atlanta kind of got beat up on the offensive line by the Carolina Panthers. And this was more of what Atlanta was doing last year, that outside zone scheme, across the board, run blocking really, really well. Chris Lindstrom looking like he did last year before he really got paid. Caleb McGarry at right tackle. But boy, once again, I'm more impressed with Bijan Robinson and his ability to just slither through to pick up yards. Yeah. And one of the key plays, 4th and 1 on the game-winning drive, and they pitch it out to him. And, there was a kind of a hole there, but he had to make a quick cut. His ability to just make a cut and see something and react to it immediately and maximize what there is just really fantastic right now, Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson kind of... Honestly, one of my biggest takeaways when he carries the ball is how good NFL defenses are. Like, in high school, Bijan Robinson is the kind of player where in high school he would just score a touchdown every time he touched the ball, like, because he beats so many players every single time with a cut or with a move or whatever. And then in college, it starts to look like Reggie Bush, where it's like, it's not happening every play, but it's enough to get you like 9 yards per carry. And then the NFL... it's like all it's doing is turning an 8-yard gain into a 15-yard gain. It's like you're definitely adding value, but NFL defenses are still so good that they're stopping you anyway. There was one run, I don't remember, it was relatively early in the game, and it didn't go for that much. It was like a 12-yard carry. But he had like four cuts. Yeah.
Right? He was slaloming.
Right.
Is that
like
right?
4 or 5 individual moves. Each one gained him an extra like 2 yards till the next guy hit him or the next guy came along. And he had to do this like in a sequence at full speed, in a move. It was like a fluid sort of dance routine. And all it did was gain him 12 yards. You're like, dude, like this is just NFL defenses are so freaking good that you can have a guy who one-on-one is basically unstoppable. And like he could string a sequence of these together, and it's still only going to turn. I don't know what an average running back maybe gets you 4 or 5 on that play, and Bijan just turned it into 12 by virtue of being one of the best like runners we've seen come along in years. It's just he's incredible, but it also does remind you just how good or how hard it is to beat NFL defenses.
You mentioned earlier, too, kind of the enigma of Desmond Ridder, because, again, it's another game. I don't think he was great. Really nice touchdown pass to Drake London in there. But you see what that offense is capable of. Bijan had 48 yards receiving as well. You get Jonnu Smith involved in the pass game. Kyle Pitts did not get as involved in this game. They did target him 5 times, only ends up with 15 yards. But Drake London and Mac Hollins, the 2 top leading receivers, as we said all offseason here, this entire group of skill positions from the running backs to the mostly big-bodied pass catchers, the ability to distribute all these mismatch types of players does put a big burden on the defense, and I think we're seeing that so far. Not that it's the best offense in the league or anything, but you're getting some of those big plays from difficult-to-cover receivers from Atlanta.
No, you are. But as we said at the start, it's all going to come down to Desmond Ridder. Now, they're doing some interesting things. Like they've been using Desmond Ridder in the design run game, what we were preaching about. They did it in a really interesting way as well. They had him running essentially a read option from the pistol. Like this is the Colin Kaepernick playbook, right? Like out of those San Francisco offenses. Pistol formation, zone read, Desmond Ridder carries the ball and gains, some yardage. So that, I think, is an important part of this offense. Ritter's biggest problem at the moment, when he gets to the red zone, I don't know what he's looking at. Like, he has throws in the red zone, particularly in the end zone, where I genuinely don't know what he's even reading. Like, it kind of feels... I started playing Madden again recently because Tyler didn't know or didn't specify what platform he had, so I ended up getting his game code. So I've been playing a little bit of Madden recently, and it reminded me that that stuff we talk about with the S2 cognition score, quick, immediate, split-second processing, don't have that. Never had it, never will. So there are plays where you're like, I want to throw to the X receiver here. And then you read it and like the X receiver's covered, I got to go somewhere else. Mash a button, right? Just hit one of them. One of the other buttons somebody's got to be open. The X guy's covered. One of the other buttons on this controller goes to an open receiver. Just hit one. That's what it feels like Desmond Ridder does in the red zone, right? It's like there's a play designed to go to this guy. That guy's covered. Mash a button. Just hit another button and fire the ball somewhere into the end zone. Let's just see what happens. That's what it feels like. That's how he analyzes the end zone. And like that doesn't fly as an NFL quarterback.
You just compared Desmond Ridder to your Madden skills.
Yeah.
Your
in the
Madden
red zone.
Stick skills.
That's what it feels like he does in the red zone. Like I have a design play drawn up to get to Drake London, but Drake London's covered here, so I'm just going to randomly mash a button on the controller and hope that the ball that goes to is open.
Well, the Falcons are 2-0 despite the Madden player at quarterback. Let's go.
By the way, just like along with the Jordan Love stats not necessarily matching up his performance, Desmond Ridder should have thrown a pick 6 in this game. Like he tossed the ball right to Jair Alexander on a 4th and 4, I think it was. And one of the most egregious decisions and throws of the week. And Jair drops it. And it's nothing, just a turnover on downs, but, should have been
I got to check the receiver. I think he's expecting a curl from the receiver, a little hitch from the receiver.
I don't think there's anything he could have done, the receiver, that would have... Like, if you're absolving a quarterback in this game from something, Jordan Love's one of his turnover-worthy plays was, I think, the only route run by one of his young receivers, and the receiver got owned on that play.
Oh yeah, that's what I said. I think that's probably on the receiver as well. I don't know, on the Love one. We'll see what happens upon review here. There's some discussion in the chat about Justin Fields. So let's get right to Tampa Bay 27, Chicago Bears 17. The Bucs also moved to 2-0, tied with the Falcons for first place. We'll see if the Saints can join them tonight. NFC South, we mentioned at the beginning of the year, not the most difficult schedules in the world. So now the Bucs, looking pretty good. Offensively, Mike Evans with a huge game. Baker Mayfield's playing good ball. The Bucs defense, we talked about Justin Fields maybe having some problems with the pass rush. He was just having problems with everything yesterday. So let's start on the Bucs side, at least here, Sam. Let's give them credit, and then we'll go into some of the issues that the Bears are having.
Okay, let's do that.
Look, the Bucs. Baker Mayfield's playing good ball. He's actually, outside first play of the game. Kind of forces one, could have thrown an interception. It was really clean outside of that. This is the best I've seen Baker Mayfield throw the ball and actually throw with some anticipation, almost too quick on a couple passes. This is the best I've seen Baker Mayfield play, and I'm not, you and I have talked about us being out on Baker because of the inconsistencies over the last 5 years. But I think Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, not only bringing a more QB-friendly scheme to the mix here, but, tapping into the playmakers that they have, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and getting Baker Mayfield playing on time and with confidence. Really impressed by everything they're doing in Tampa Bay offensively right now.
Yeah, 9.7 yards per attempt kind of speaks for itself. And he left some meat on the bone. Baker missed he overthrew Chris Godwin, I think, for what could have, should have been a touchdown. And it was like that's a 4-point miss because they ended up settling for a field goal on that drive on an open target into the end zone. So it is productive right now, and it's not like there's more to come if Baker Mayfield hits a few more of those plays. They're almost
Mike Evans going for a 70-yarder. He your guy, you're not your guy, Tyreek Stevenson, but Evans elbowed him in the head, goes up, gets the ball, runs away for 70 yards. That's Mike Evans balling out here.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is they're almost exactly evenly splitting right now, yards after the catch and yards before the catch. Like you see those things swing wildly in one direction. I think generally it's a good number to have balanced, if you're getting help from your receivers, but not too much. So there's a division of labor there. The receivers for Tampa Bay are doing their work, Baker's doing his work, and everything's working. And the other element to all that is the offensive line, which is not playing out of its mind good, but is playing good enough. The issue with an offensive line is always does it reach the level of concern? Does it reach a problematic level? And I don't think this Bucs offensive line is hitting that. It's certainly not where it was when it was at its best and Tom Brady was cooking, but it hasn't descended or devolved to the point where you're like, this is breaking the offense, and that's allowing everything to work.
So I'm impressed with what Tampa Bay is doing offensively. Rachaad White finds the end zone on the ground. Mayfield's playing, I would say, pretty sharp overall. And Evans playing like a man possessed out there in a contract year for the Bucs. We'll see what ends up happening there. Or, people thought maybe at the trade deadline that Mike Evans might be available because the Bucs roster itself was not looking good. We didn't know what we'd get from Baker Mayfield, but they also, every NFC South team has an easy schedule. So we've only seen the Bucs play the Bears, who look pretty bad, and the Vikings, who, they're also 0-2, competitive, but, just an interesting story here with the Bucs moving to 2-0. On the other side, Chicago, again, the defense has given up that 70-yarder, and they're giving up 317 passing yards to Baker Mayfield. Second week in a row, the Bears defense has looked rough, but offensively, Justin Fields takes 6 sacks. And just, so many of them, he's just not throwing the ball and waiting for pressure to get there. It is just really poor right now from Justin Fields.
Yeah. This is the problem with Justin Fields is when you're evaluating a young quarterback, all you really want is a clean evaluation. Like, remember we had this with Baker, right, at the start of his career. It's like, let's just make sure it's Baker, not everything else. Like, his offensive line was a problem. You're like, if you could just fix that and we can be sure what Baker's problem is, let alone the offensive line. So Chicago's offensive line last year was bad. They've tried to improve it this year. It's probably moving in the right direction, but it's still not good. So you're like, how much is Fields? How much is the offensive line? He took sacks yesterday where it's like, even without checking the all-22 and like seeing where the receivers are and all that kind of thing, like, there are some sacks that look obviously terrible from TV copy. He took a bunch of those yesterday that only look worse when you pull up the all-22 to find out what was happening with the receivers and all that kind of thing. Like, there is a degree to which there are coverage sacks at times, but even, good quarterbacks tend not to take coverage sacks. They find a way out of the play, even if it's just throwing the ball away at the time. Like, Fields is taking some truly terrible sacks that only look worse when you see there are open receivers, not just at the time he gets sacked, but like early in the play that he's ignoring and passing up. And you're like, you reach the point of asking, like, what are you doing at the moment? Like, what is happening on this play?
Yeah, not to cite JT O'Sullivan again, who we cited quite a bit in the preview here, but people like to say, this guy can't read it out or whatever. JT was using the word vision a lot, and I thought there was one play, you've got four receivers to one side, right? When you flood one side of the field with four receivers, the scheme is designed to outflank the defense, and when it's four out, you're probably going to outflank the defense. And that was one of those plays where the scheme did it, man. They did it, and Fields was looking to that side of the field, and he waited like 4 seconds to get sacked on the play. I mean, there was a play where Vita Vea got pancaked to the floor, got up, didn't have his bearings. He actually went the wrong way away from Fields. And all of this stuff happened while Fields held the ball and got sacked by someone else. If you just watch Vita Vea, like, a million things happened to him and he still almost had a chance to get in on the action at the quarterback. So that stuff is extremely concerning. He has opportunities to throw the ball and he's not. The one other thing, we use the word athleticism a lot, and it's generally tied to running. My other concern with Fields, this isn't just in this game, but like, it just kind of, you see it. He's not athletic in the pocket. He's not athletic as a passer right now. He's athletic moving, right? When he moves out of the pocket, as soon as his acceleration's out of this world, his top end speed is incredible. But when he just needs to athletically move through progressions, keep his feet under him, the stuff that, like, when you watch Tom Brady, you're like, wow, he's incredible at that, right? Just, keeping your base and looking through progressions and all that. And Fields is kind of the opposite right now. So even when he does want to go through progressions, the footwork's just not tied to things. And it's not good. I mean, of course, there's a couple good throws in there. There's a bang 8, boom, for the touchdown. I think the pick 6, the 4-yard pick 6 in a comeback attempt where Shaq Barrett just kind of picks it off. To me, that's more of a great defensive play than a bad offensive play. You're throwing a screen. You always have to kind of throw it blind and trust that the defensive line's going to get sucked in. And Barrett, unbelievable play, peels off, one-hands it, and steps it in the end zone. But it's just the play-by-play, man. And, taking 6 sacks on a day when, Todd Bowles' defense is tricky, but this wasn't immediate pressure every single time. There's a couple of those, but there was too many of these negative plays for Fields. Yeah,
and I actually thought early in the game he started quite encouragingly. Like, that's almost more worrying than anything is I thought early in the game he was throwing in rhythm, he was hitting his intended target, he was, like, it looked normal. Like, he was just dropping back in rhythm, loosing the pass, hitting an open guy onto the next play. It's the fact that over the course of the game, it then devolved into this, like, I literally don't understand what you are doing at the moment. You're ignoring open receivers that you saw early in the game. You're finding a way to hold the ball forever. Your pocket presence is bad, and you're just waiting until the sack arrives. Like, what are we doing here? This is what we said earlier. Like, Justin Fields looks like a far more raw quarterback prospect than Anthony Richardson, who's played the game of football for like 8 minutes in total. Like, It's insane. We're starting to, I think justifiably we should be starting to get concerned about Fields at this point because he's not moving forward, and if anything, we're heading in the wrong direction when it comes to this kind of stuff. This is headed down a Baker Mayfield path of skewing himself towards bad habits, and it's happening on a regular basis. That something needs to change to stop him doing that.
I just want to paint this picture though too. Last year, remember week 6 or 7, there's a Thursday night game, and the Bears play Washington and score 7 points, and that looked like just a rock bottom for the Bears and for Justin Fields. And within a week or two, they're beating the Patriots on Monday Night Football, and Fields is showing signs of life. And it was when he just started taking games over with his legs. And then it became, okay, that bought us some time. He is a 1,000-yard runner and out of this world as running the ball. That's going to buy us some time as a passer. So we still, as we're writing him off right here in week 2, maybe there's going to be one of those games where he runs for $150 and 2 or 3 scores. But man, if this stuff doesn't improve, I don't know if the Bears care. I don't know if they care that he could be a 1,000-yard runner and run for 10 touchdowns. If the pass game stuff doesn't improve, if he doesn't stop taking 5 or 6 sacks a week, they might move on, and we might be saying, hey, look, Fields, you're just not effective enough in the pass game to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think the running stuff, it does buy you time, but he's already had that time. It bought him last year. The running stuff bought him last year and the start of this year. Now you actually need to see it. It's same with the Jalen Hurts thing worked because Jalen Hurts took a big step every single season. Running bought him time, but then eventually he had to show that step every year. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got the next year. The running is going to buy Anthony Richardson time. But if he still looks the same next year as he looked now, we're going to have some discussions. That's where we are with Justin Fields. The rushing bought him a lot of time, but now he actually needs to take that step forward. I've got a question for you. You've become a literal meme, in fact, on the Discord for simply never watching a special teams play in the game of football. Do you even know who Jake Camarda is?
Yeah, the Bucs punter.
There you go. Do you know what he did in this game?
Nope.
So they had a blocked field goal attempt, the Bucs. Tyreek Stevenson, I think, in fact, was the guy that blocked the field goal. And
I knew that.
Skidded off, behind everybody. Probably would have been a touchdown. Only Jake Camarda dove in there and saved the touchdown. Really nice play by him. Now, obviously, not what you want your punter doing in the general course of things, but that saved points. Punters are people too, and in this case, he saved a touchdown.
I don't remember he did something good last year too when we mentioned him on the podcast. He might be the most oft-used, oft-mentioned punter in PFF NFL podcast history.
I mean, it's not a high bar to clear. Yeah.
It's not. Don't put me on the spot like that. Did you see the special teams play? Don't ever do that.
I mean, my default assumption is you won't have seen the special teams play because you don't.
Shoot, I forgot. I haven't checked in on the Discord. I had to go. I have a Madden code I still have to hand out to somebody that won. Our next partner, AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I'm traveling right now, Sam. I need my AG1 every single day. Mm-hmm. We drink it every day. It's a great way to kick things off, get your nutrients, because, hey, we need our nutrients at the start of the day. Look at that. We got some nice little video there showing it to you. Just mix it with your water, chug it down, and you're going to feel great, feel unstoppable, ready to take on the day like I am. All great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. And a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them, those top-notch athletes, Sam, they drink their AG1, and that's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients and to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity, especially for a 7 a.m. podcast on no sleep. It's this micro habit that keeps me going, man. It's all AG1. They cover my nutritional basis for the day. Literally couldn't be easier than just taking my AG1. And it's less than $3 a day. It's really good, if you ask me. Nice, effective daily habit. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. PFF.com/PFF. Go check it out. All right, let's go. Kansas City Chiefs 17, Jacksonville Jaguars 9. Not the shootout type of game that we were expecting here, but the Chiefs pull it out. They move to 1-1. Jags fall to 1-1. I think the story of the game here for me, well, first off, Travis Kelce comes back, finds the end zone. So he comes back from his injury, 4 catches for 26 yards on 9 targets. And Patrick Mahomes looked pretty solid again, does turn it over with an interception, dropped interception in there early as well. But the story for me is the Jaguars in the red zone could not score in the red zone, could not put the ball in the end zone in the red zone, couldn't score touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had a lot of near misses, Sam. A lot of pass gets there, 1 foot in, really tight window throws. I think the Chiefs defense deserves a ton of credit, but this one, 2 things, right? It was the game where the Chiefs just decide they're going to turn it over in every which way they can. Much like Thursday night, much like last year's regular season game against Jacksonville. And the Jags unable to capitalize because they just could not put the ball in the end zone with all those opportunities.
Yeah, including right at the death. I mean, they, ball right at the back of the end zone to Calvin Ridley, whose day seemed to be like all of those plays. Calvin Ridley had something like 7 targets, 2 catches. But like almost all of the incompletions were like razor thin, almost got it, almost had it, almost got the foot down, almost didn't step out of bounds. Like the whole game was like that, and that kind of ended up being the difference. Yeah, so Travis Kelce came back, but I thought clearly did not really look like Travis Kelce yet. He had 9 targets, 4 catches for 26 yards, one of which was the touchdown. But there were sort of few things. Number one, I don't think he just looked himself, but even just statistically, you could see 1 yard per route run. He's usually 2 or 3 times that. All 5 of his targets were contested catches, and he only caught 1 of them. The fact that 5 of them were contested tells you that he wasn't really himself, because that doesn't typically happen to Travis Kelce. But the important part was the touchdown that he scored was why they need him on the field even if he's not 100%.
Yeah.
Like that's the telepathic connection that he has with Mahomes to find the space and be on the same page in finding the space when things start to break down is why he's so important. It's like even if he can't move, it's important having him out there because he understands where Mahomes wants to go with the ball when the play's gone to hell and he's moving and the space is, it's a fluid picture that's changing constantly. Like Kelce knows where that's supposed to be. Nobody else they have does. Like every other receiver on the field, Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Noah Gray, Kadarius Toney, none of them have that feel that Kelce does. Not just where the space is going to be, but also like where Mahomes wants to go with it. Like those are 2 slightly different questions. And Kelce gets both parts of it. And that, like, honestly, it's the difference in this game. It literally is that score and Kelce's understanding with Mahomes. So, Kelce will get better. He'll get more healthy. We'll get, I'm sure, him back to full strength. But if he's simply out there, it makes a difference to this team.
To be fair to Sky Moore, he did find the open grass for a 54-yarder that pretty much sealed the deal for Kansas City when they were trying to run the clock in their 4-minute drill. They had a big 3rd and long. Mahomes does what he does and extends the play, finds Sky Moore for the 54-yarder. Really outside of that play, it was another just so-so performance, I think, by the Kansas City offense. They had barely run the ball in the first half. I think their running backs had 1 or 2 carries. They did start the second half running the ball a little bit. You were reminded that Isaiah Pacheco is, just a hard-nosed runner, imposing, just punishment on the defense. Pacheco running hard, had a 31-yarder in there, but he averaged almost 6 yards a carry. And I know I say this every year, but I'm not saying the Chiefs need balance or any of that, but getting Isaiah Pacheco X number of carries just to have a different body type to tackle, just to say, look, now you're going to have to, face a power player, basically, because we're hitting you with a whole bunch of finesse. We're hitting you with a whole bunch of, horizontal pass game and underneath pass game, and we're making you tackle in space. But at some point, you're going to have to get physical against the Chiefs, and Pacheco adds that element to it. So I always like that balance, that on any given play, You've got a battering ram type of running back like Pacheco, but also you have to, face the finesse type of passing attack that Kansas City's bringing to the table. So I thought that was interesting. Trevor Lawrence, man, the stat line is not great. 22 of 41 for 216, 68 passer rating. We have him. There are 4 passes in there that are tight window, pretty much tight window, really well thrown, that fell incomplete. So you're not going to see that big of a difference. To me, this was really the difference in the game, right? A lot of these were in the red zone, the passes we've already talked about, but he was hitting some tight window throws. And Zay Jones back of the end zone, Calvin Ridley on 4th down that you mentioned, just not getting the benefit of those plays. The Jags need to make those plays, man, especially if they're trying to knock off the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, so you're right. Any one of those literally changes the outcome of the game potentially. But I think because the Chiefs receivers were still kind of letting them down a little bit, catch fumble type of play, I think that part evened it out, but the difference was, like, Kansas City got 2 of their 3 best players back on the field in this game. They got Travis Kelce and they got Chris Jones. We already talked about what Kelce brings to the table and what he added to this team. The other side of that is Chris Jones showed up. I mean, he was one of their best players on defense, period. But like all, genuinely great defenders, he also showed up, like, in the right moments. I mean, Chris Jones got a sack on a 4th down at midfield at one point in the game. Just perfect timing, big play, ends the drive. He also got, I think it was a hit, not a sack, but like 3rd and long.
The 3rd down.
Yeah.
It was exactly what I predicted on the preview show, Sam. Remember, I said, hey, he'll line up out wide against right tackle rookie Anton Harrison. Right. Keep an eye on the matchup. Pull up the audio. Just go get the audio, someone. But he gets the quick win against the rookie in crunch time. Sorry to steal your thunder, but I needed to make that point that I predicted one thing right.
No, absolutely. Take your victory lap. So, 3rd and long. 4th and 4 and 3rd and long are two of his most important plays in the game, 2 of his biggest wins in the game. That changes the outcome of the game. I mean, that's 2 drives that got stopped because Chris Jones took over, the same way we've seen, in key games in the playoffs in the past. So 2 of their best 3 players, with the other one being Mahomes, who's just at this level of, absurd at all times, seemingly, came into this game and made discernible, tangible differences to the outcome. Like, that, honestly, was the biggest story, is that for as much as we can talk about how good Kansas City's roster is top to bottom, I mean, this is a great case study of how 2 guys can change the outcome of the game.
The Chiefs' offensive line, I want to talk about Jawan Taylor. There's a request in the chat to discuss Jawan Taylor, 5 penalties yesterday. But the Chiefs' offensive line, from a pass pro standpoint, outstanding once again, much like they were in the playoff game when Mahomes had one leg. Jags pass rush, man, I've said this throughout the offseason. If Josh Allen isn't having a 6 or 7 pressure day, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what's happening. And Allen's not the type of guy where he's really, really consistent week to week. He does have 6 and 7 pressure games, and then he has your 2 pressure game. There's nothing from Trayvon Walker still. There's just not enough from a Jags perspective, especially against this one of the better pass protecting offensive lines in the league. I don't know how much we've actually discussed the whole tackle jumping. It looks like the tackle false start deal. I mean, I don't want to spend an hour on it because the O-line people love discussing this, but a week after Jawan Taylor, looks like he's false starting and everyone's pulling it out. I mean, he's really just moving right at the snap, but it's harder to do on the road. And, he's picking up all sorts of penalties here in this game. But those aren't really false starts, Sam. When in this game they were, but generally they're moving right at the ball. It looks like the right tackle or the left tackle's leaving early. Just an interesting thing that a lot of tackles are doing around the league.
Yeah. So number one, it's not just Jawan Taylor. Number two, there's 3 separate elements to sort of how he is pushing the boundaries. And the third part of this is, by the way, the NFL basically came out and said, we're going to pay attention to this week. Like, what happened on opening night was a farce. Like, it was clearly the lines have been the envelope has been pushed too far, and we're actually going to push back at this because it is ridiculous. Now, all the offensive line guys, Duke and all those guys have been pushing back, saying this has been happening for years, and it's not, this is just where we are. Like, yeah, but at some point we go too far, and we actually do need to correct, right? Like, it's like the re-emphasis of the rules that happens every now and again. It's, you can push the boundary and push the boundary and push the boundary and take an inch and an inch and an inch, and at some point you go, hang on, like look where we started and look where we are now. We need to go back. We need to make a change. That's what the officials have done off the back of opening night. And had that game not been, an island game, everybody's watching, probably wouldn't have happened. But that's the reality of how the world works, is when you're exposed to the sunlight on the biggest stage, that's when you get a reaction. So there's 3 different ways he's taking the piss, frankly. Number 1, stance. Like, he's so far off the line of scrimmage. His helmet theoretically is supposed to intersect with the waistline, like the belt line of the center. And it doesn't have to, like just the Venn diagram, they just need to cross over slightly. So he can be quite a long way back from the line of scrimmage and still be good. He, having said that, on opening night was clearly too far back almost all the time. Number 2, he is one of these guys, Lane Johnson is another, and I'm sure there's a few of the other ones out there as well, who sort of do this thing where they're constantly resetting like their back foot before the snap, like getting it comfortable, almost like a sort of twitch mechanism so that they're ready to spring back off the line as soon as the snap comes. So whereas a lot of other positions, you got to get into your stance and then not move for a period of time before the snap, officials are kind of giving these guys that leeway to mess with that back foot almost right up until the snap. And then the third point is he actually setting off before the ball is snapped? And on most occasions, he actually isn't. He's just timing it perfectly. But you add those 3 things together and it looks really bad. It's the fact that the other 2 are coming into play along with the perfect timing of the snap. But there was also a play or 2 here or there where he was jumping early in addition to those other 3 things, right? So one of the things off the back of this is, he had a ton of penalties. I think only one of them was false start, though. Like, it was the fact that I think he sort of was prepared for the backlash and maybe messed with his setup a little bit. But, overall, I think it was just a thing that offensive linemen have been collectively pushing the boundaries of for a while. The officials are apparently trying to crack down on it, and it's probably a good thing.
Well said, Sam. Chiefs 17-9. Look, the Chiefs defense has given up 23 points in 2 games. Just something to keep an eye on. The Lions only scored 14 offensive points week 1, 9 against the Jags. Of course, it takes winning in the red zone, whether that's the Jags' fault, whether that's the Chiefs cracking down. Either way, every year we say this. If the Chiefs end up having a average to high-end defense, especially while their offense is kind of finding their way right now and turning it over, Kansas City they're still the best team in the NFL, but they're, a little bit more dangerous if they can take a team like the Jags, who have explosive ability that we saw in week 1, and hold them to 9 points. Pretty impressive by Kansas City and Spags, of course.
Spags. Left tackle Donovan Smith ended up with the ball in his hands on multiple occasions in this game. That's probably not great.
I mean, it's Andy Reid. You never know. That could be part of the game plan.
Yeah, not by design, though. One of them was Mahomes found what he thought was an open receiver, and it turned out to be his left tackle. And then another one, I think he just fell on a fumble. But in an ideal world, I think they would rather Donovan Smith didn't possess the ball on multiple occasions.
All right, let's go. Seattle 37, Detroit 31. Final in overtime for the Seattle Seahawks. Both teams now 1-1. It looked a lot like last year's game. Bit of a shootout. Both quarterbacks played really well. You saw Geno Smith just a really good game from him again, where we said, hey, last week wasn't great, but he had a bit of a roller coaster ride last year, and he got back up and played well. Tyler Lockett with a huge game in finding the end zone twice for Seattle. But Detroit's offense, similar. Jared Goff played really well. Mm-hmm. Outside of one pass, which turned into, the first interception he had thrown in 300-something passes. It's a pick 6 by Trey Brown. That ends up being a huge part of the game, of course, because it went to overtime. But I don't think this was Goff. I mean, I think both offensive lines played really well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just a really good offensive showing from both teams, and Seattle wins the shootout.
Yeah, which is a big result for them, given what happened week 1, how bad that looked. And the expectations for Seattle heading into the season. If they had fallen to 0-2, even with an improved performance, this week, that would have been pretty concerning. But they didn't. Like, they bounced back. They won the game in addition to having the good performance. So big by them. Both starting tackles, now sophomore tackles, were out of the game. So Stone Forsyth and Jake Curran were their two tackles. One held up, I think, slightly better than the other, but the fact that that offensive line didn't collapse with that situation going up against Detroit's pass rush was a big thing for them. And then the offense generally looked pretty good. I mean, all three of those top receivers that they had a good game. Geno Smith, I think, generally played really well, but had a couple of bad plays in there as well, which in a game like this probably ended up, being a big part of the difference. Even though they end up winning the game. But, like, this was a fun game.
Yeah, I'm impressed by Seattle's offensive line. We spent a lot of time talking about those injuries and the fact that the Lions have – it's not an elite pass rush, but Aiden Hutchinson, really good. We saw that in night one against Kansas City, and in this game, 7 out of the 17 pressures that the team had that a player accumulated came from Aiden Hutchinson. But I don't know, maybe I've overrated the depth that they have there with Charles Harris, and I don't think we've overrated James Houston, but he was a situational guy. He only rushed the passer 3 times in this game. So you just didn't get any help besides Aiden Hutchinson. So good job by Seattle, and maybe a little concerning from Detroit that they're not able to take advantage of, basically the late round or undrafted backup tackles who are early in their career. The Lions are unable to take advantage of that in the Dome, and Geno Smith picked them apart. This was not one of those games where Geno's dropping 4 or 5 big-time throws. He was just hitting the open man and moving the ball and playing a good, effective game, like you said, outside of those couple plays, right? So I think that's a little concerning for Detroit in their defense, and impressive by Seattle that they took advantage and then also, again, took advantage with the backups in there.
Yeah. So there was a play in this game where there was offsetting pass interference penalties, essentially, on DK Metcalf versus Joseph in the end zone. And this felt like just a bad – I think it didn't feel like it was proportionate to how that play worked, right? Which was all DK Metcalf executing the illegal play. Like, he had a hand in his face mask, was sort of wrenching him to the side, who was just generally like abusing him physically in the course of this play. And then only right at the end, after wrenched by the face mask out of the way, did Joseph reach out and kind of grab DK Metcalf just to try and not be thrown to the side. Did he have any kind of illegal contact? And that was enough for the refs to say, well, that's defensive pass interference as well. Now it's offsetting flags. Like, when a play is all one guy making the illegal contact right up until like the very end, that shouldn't be offsetting penalties. That should be offensive pass interference that maybe resulted in some illegal contact by the other guy, but only like way after he was being illegally contacted himself. Like, offsetting penalties should be designed for, equal crimes being committed here. That's not what happened in this play. That just felt like a bad interpretation of how those rules are supposed to work.
You don't get the offsetting pass interference penalties often. It's usually was it DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey or something? It's like these two great players are going at it and they're getting physical. It's like, just throw the flag on both of them. But you're right. It's usually somebody initiates and then that leads to a response. And I just want to highlight the game winner for Geno Smith in overtime. It's again, I don't know how concerning this is for the Lions because it looked a little bit like the opener against the Chiefs. It's Aiden Hutchinson gets the win. He gets the pressure, but there's no one else. And the quarterback, it's Geno. He avoids it, right? I mean, that's what Mahomes kept doing on Thursday night. When there's one pressure, when there's only one guy winning or even close to the quarterback, it's not nearly as detrimental. If the quarterback sidesteps it, then they actually have room to run, and there's just no help. I'm a little concerned about Detroit not having the pocket collapsing and just not having enough. And from a Geno Smith perspective, 3rd and 2, you've got the field goal in hand. You'd have to give the ball back to Detroit, but just a beautiful play to get outside the pocket away from Aiden Hutchinson to hit Tyler Lockett, who gets in for the game winner. And it's a lot easier in overtime if you just score the touchdown. Don't put the ball in your defense's hands to make a stop. So big win for Seattle. I do want to shout out Jared Goff. I mean, this was one of his better games, man. You take out the pick six, he's 28 of 35 for 323. Him and Josh Reynolds, just an outstanding connection so far here. Two touchdowns, but Goff was throwing the ball really accurately up the seam. Amon-Ra St. Brown to Reynolds. They had the Khalif Raymond play on the flea flicker, 36-yard touchdown. You got to have more Khalif Raymond plays. You always have to. Jahmyr Gibbs watch. Not impressive right now. 7 catches for 39, 7 carries for 17. So not much there for Gibbs. But I want to shout out Goff because I think he played a really good game, and him and Geno, again, battling back and forth.
Goff played great. Beautiful pass up the seam to Reynolds for a touchdown. The Gibbs thing, though, is relevant because David Montgomery got hurt in this game. Montgomery, I think, we've been running reasonably hard, but they don't have – so whatever about the dynamic of how they've been deploying Gibbs and he needs more work and all this kind of thing, they're not going to give him David Montgomery's job. Like, those are two separate roles within this offense. There's the straight ahead between the tackles, bell cow type of runner, and then there's whatever it is they're trying to turn Jahmyr Gibbs into. But David Montgomery being down, they don't have an alternative to that guy on the roster necessarily. Craig Reynolds was the guy who's going to come in and take that job based off the remainder of this game after he went hurt. And Reynolds had, 3 attempts for 7 yards. So I don't know that Reynolds is going to be the guy that's able to do what David Montgomery does either. So that's a worry or a blow to Detroit coming out of this game, is losing David Montgomery. The other thing I had as a note in this game was the single greatest individual troll in the NFL, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, was out-trolled by the Seahawks. Now, number one, remember, he's always the guy drawing the idiot penalty in the game by annoying people into punching him in the head or whatever. He got flagged after a big defensive stop early in the game. I think he made a tackle for loss on Kenneth Walker, but then got up and bumped him, got in his face and got the taunting flag or whatever. It's usually the other way around that works. And then he made this thing about the blue ski masks, and Seattle had one of those in the locker room and was busy trolling him after the game. So in an unusual turn-up, the master troll was, in fact, the one being trolled.
A double loss for the Lions and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Both teams 1-1 here in the NFC. And, it's a tough one if you're in Detroit and a much-needed one if you are in Seattle. Last of the 1 o'clock games, we've got Tennessee 27, Los Angeles Chargers 24, another overtime win. Tennessee gets the win here to go to 1-1. Chargers fall to 0-2. I don't want to misquote the stat, but it's something like teams that have scored over 25 points per game with no turnovers through 2 games have never started 0-2. But the Chargers are here.
Yeah.
And they have.
The Chargers
I think that's the stat. Man. What'd you make of this one?
I mean, you forget sometimes. You forget sometimes that it's the Chargers. You start rationally analyzing the game and working through it on a player-by-player basis or a scheme basis, and you forget that none of it matters because it's the Chargers, And they're going to do what they always do, which is find a way to lose a game that they should have won comfortably. And this is what happened. Ryan Tannehill went from having one of the worst performances of his NFL career in week 1 to looking like peak Tennessee Titans Ryan Tannehill with his 90-plus grade and just being efficient and, hitting a couple of nice throws here and there. That's this should not have happened, any of this game.
Yeah, the Chargers defense is allowing 10.3 yards per attempt through 2 games. So every time the quarterback drops back and makes a throw, they're averaging a first down against the Chargers defense. Now, that's not including the sacks, of course. I'm just talking yards per attempt. Tannehill was sacked 5 times. The offensive line was having some serious communication problems on the left side.
Right.
It was just ugly.
He was under pressure, 8 dropbacks, and they resulted in 5 sacks. They were almost all instant win, blown protections or that kind of thing. And yet it still didn't stop the Chargers defense capitulating and failing to stop anything.
Yeah, the 4th and 4, Kenneth Murray's right there at the snap, blown assignment and everything. But first off, I want to give credit to the Titans, right? Because you got to give credit. Tannehill did play a nice, clean game. Beautiful 70-yard pass to Treylon Burks, hit him in stride, hit Chris Moore for a 49-yarder. I thought Tannehill, this was the old Tannehill, right? I mean, threw the ball much better. And defensively, one of the matchups that we highlighted coming into the game was the Titans' defensive line and their ability to stop the run, because the Chargers had the most effective run game in the NFL in week 1. Now, Austin Eckler does not play in this game, and I'm sure that's a factor, but Tennessee wins up front for the second straight week, not necessarily from a pass rush standpoint, but just run defense and making the Chargers more one-dimensional. And so, that's the old school Titans that we've seen under Mike Vrabel, right? Just kind of win the phone booth battles and, win some of those small battles that added up, and you've got a 27-24 overtime win. Yeah,
they really did. There were a couple of weird things in this game. At one point, I think generally speaking, the Chargers offense is fine. The Justin Herbert, Kellen Moore connection, I think, is probably working in the right direction. The fact that Austin Eckler wasn't playing is a big blow, not just for what he could do on the ground, but as a receiver as well. It's a big loss to that offense, as much as maybe any running back in the NFL. And this is the reason that the man wanted more money in the offseason. This would be a good game to highlight in his personal plea for more money to the Chargers. But at one point, they dialed up Mike Williams in a jet sweep. It's like, what? Now, there have been a surprisingly high number of Mike Williams.
It works, didn't it?
I mean, a little bit. But
I wouldn't do it just because I want him to not get tackled ever.
There have been
because of the injuries.
There have been a surprisingly large number of wide receiver Mike Williamses in NFL history, and not a single one of them belongs on a jet sweep. If you think of all the Mike Williams that have played wide receiver in the NFL, none of them are the type of receiver that is well suited to having a jet sweep carry, including this one, who is best suited vertically.
Rest in peace to the Bucs, Mike Williams.
Right, absolutely. Who is suited to being a vertical threat deep down the field and is not, a short area ball in his hand type of receiver. So that was a bizarre play call in this offense and a bizarre deployment of their talent, which is starting to look like a little bit of a trend with those receivers. I mean, Mike Williams in this game, Quentin Johnston in week 1 was being deployed in some weird ways. Then there's also Josh Palmer had an absolutely ridiculous catch in the back of the end zone where kind of looked like he got both feet down and they didn't give it to him because this field doesn't have the black pellets that pop up, when you drag your toe. This one doesn't have
grass.
That.
It's grass. We're going to lose that when the Players Association wins out and it's only grass.
There you go. This one didn't have the concrete evidence that his second toe dragged, although it looked like it did from the replay. And one of the best catches of the season did not get credited to the man.
Yeah, this is why I hate the Chargers. Because a lot of my analysis, I like the things they're doing. I mean, I don't like them getting beaten for 70-yard touchdowns. I don't like the fact that Khalil Mack can't rush the passer anymore, and maybe he's lost it. I don't like that. I think the Kellen Moore Herbert thing is fascinating right now. I mean, they have Keenan Allen. There was a beautiful cover 2 shot to Keenan Allen where they used Quentin Johnston to clear out the safety. They used Quentin Johnston's speed. We wanted them to add speed. They're using him as a speed clear out. He's not, tearing up the stat sheet or anything like that. Had 1 catch for 2 yards, but you see the safety drawn, and Keenan Allen's creating big plays up the sideline. Herbert's averaging over 10 yards per target, right? The complete opposite of what he had been before. To me, I think the Chargers are close, right? I mean, they scored a ton of points last week, and it's really the defense that's the concern. I think this Chargers offense is legit, and they're going to be good. And they didn't have Eckler, and they didn't, win the trench battle, but this passing game is going to be explosive as long as Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, if those guys stay out there, the tight ends, they're going to be explosive. And so I'm not concerned about that side of the ball. Like, I am just extremely concerned by the Chargers not being good defensively under Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
I mean, you said there's weird stuff in this game. They got up, 2 scores, go for 2. They get up 11-0. Once again, how did they do that? Brandon Staley goes for it on 4th and 4, up 3-0 early in the game. And they scored. That was after the Palmer non-touchdown, and then Herbert makes a great throw for a touchdown. I mean, I'm not trying to compliment Staley. I think the game management part of it is fine. I'm concerned about the defense. How is the defense that bad and giving up 10 yards per attempt? I know it was the Dolphins week 1, but this is the Titans passing attack that should not be that explosive, and they're letting them be that explosive. I think that's concerning for the Chargers. And for the Titans, this was the same type of game that they win, right? Like they have way more carries than dropbacks, and Tannehill just goes 20 for 24 and hits a couple passes and takes care of it. And at the end of the day, the Titans find a way to win.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Clark, who formerly of The Ringer, now does a podcast with Omaha and ESPN, he tweeted after the game, so let's say someone in charge asks Brandon Staley why he should keep his job. What is his best argument? And I think that pretty much sums it up at this point. Like, you're a defensive coach that's been brought on for your expertise in a system that is thriving throughout the NFL. Like, it's not like your system is just, it's run its course and it's being found out. Like, the system's actually working everywhere else. And you've got some talent, and the defensive side of the ball is just crapping itself every game. What do you do here? Like, what do you... And we just hired an offensive mind to fix that side, and that actually seems like it's working. So our multi-million-dollar quarterback and his new offensive coach seem to be going in the right direction, and your defense continues to just collapse every week. What are you bringing to the table?
Two things there. When our friend Zach Robinson was one of the finalists for the Chargers offensive coordinator job, and then Kellen Moore came free from the Cowboys and gets the job because he's got some experience and he's had some success with Dallas. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, Staley's on the hot seat here. Kellen Moore might be the head coach of the Chargers a year from now. It's early. They're 0-2, but that's the type of stuff we're talking about right now. Kellen Moore might be taking over for the Chargers. Who knows? But the answer to the Staley thing that makes it worse is when you look at the front office and say, okay, what did we give you? Now, maybe they gave him a rundown version of Khalil Mack. Maybe he is at the wrong side of his career. But you have player number 3, who's supposed to be the perfect movable chess piece for any defensive mastermind. You have one of the highest paid corners in the league, J.C. Jackson. Right or wrong, they have second-round pick Asante Samuel, first-round pick Kenneth Murray, Eric Kendricks, who was hurt. But they've added a lot of pieces here, which is why we always get excited, because the on paper it looks good for the Chargers every year. And yeah, Staley's not finding a way to make all those pieces fit defensively right now. It's
also, by the way, I mean, that's an open debate, right? How much of it is personnel moves have been bad? Like maybe Kenneth Murray hasn't played well in the NFL. Asante Samuel Jr. hasn't necessarily become the player we expected him to be. J.C. Jackson, been a disaster so far. Like, how much of that is consistently the personnel moves have actually just been mistakes, and how much of it is actually those guys, there's the basis of a really good defense here if the defensive coach made it work. Like, we're in this debate now, and this is the conversation that Chargers brass is probably having. Like, do we actually have a top 10 defense if we just change the coach tomorrow? Because this group, we thought, first-round talent linebacker, second-round talent cornerback, one of the best ball hawk cornerbacks in the NFL in the last several years. You start going through the list, you're like, this group should be good, and it isn't. Like, is this a coaching problem?
Yeah, that's why, again, I think Herbert, there's a couple downfield shots that Herbert takes where I don't think he's reading the field well, and he's just kind of chucking it up, and I don't love that. He might be better at actually working the underneath game, and that's why he's settled into the style that he has. But I do think over time, we're going to look back at Herbert's stats and production this year and say, okay, the Kellen Moore experiment worked. We're going to look at the Chargers offense and say that worked. It really might be Kellen Moore's team at the end of the year, and then he's going to bring in, as you just said, maybe a defensive coordinator to right the ship. It's early. It's only 2 games in, but 0-2. Some reporter brought up the Jacksonville game. Brandon Staley was not pleased. Brought up the playoff collapse and not great at the press conference. All right, so credit to Tennessee, 27-24 win. They moved to 1-1 in the AFC South. Let's go to the 4 o'clock games. Let's go Dallas 30, New York Jets 10. I believe this was kind of the expected outcome. Zach Wilson had his struggles outside of that 168-yard pass to Garrett Wilson, which was beautiful. Other than that, complete domination from Dallas defensively, complete domination from Micah Parsons, one of the best games you'll see from any defensive player, rushing the passer, sacks, forced fumbles. He had the forced fumble on a run and picked it up. Yeah, man, Micah is unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of a number of defenders that are sort of pushing for that Defensive Player of the Year thing. And, I mean, Parsons is absolutely one of them. But we're in this, they were talking like, don't put a cap on it. Don't say Defensive Player of the Year, like MVP and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, look, it was Tony Romo on the broadcast. So, yeah, Micah Parsons was going to be talked about in a very good light. But it's a weird time where there's like 5 probably defensive players that could all be talking about it as like the best player in the NFL at any position. And Parsons was just an absolute domination display in this game. I mean, the run game, the one-on-one wins as a pass rusher, he's so good at winning one-on-one that it almost feels like cheating to deploy him as part of a stunt as well. Like you have stunts that sort of cross the end and the tackle are literally designed to make life easier for those guys rushing the passer. It's not like Micah Parsons needs his life to be made easier. He's already winning so easily one-on-one. I don't even think Zach Wilson was particularly bad in this game. 2 of those turnovers, the interceptions, came late in the game when he was already way behind the 8 ball. I mean, look, the way you heard Peyton Manning talking about him on the Manning cast when he went in, the way you heard Tony Romo talking about him in this game, clearly Zach Wilson is a quarterback who needs to be in front of the chains most of the time, right? In a good game script situation. If the game is getting away from the Jets, he's in trouble. And that's what happened in this game. Like eventually the Jets got into a big enough hole, and at that point you can pretty much write it off. Zach Wilson is not bringing you back, and in fact is probably going to make it worse. But I don't think he was necessarily terrible for the first, 2-3 quarters of the game.
No, I agree. I mean, if the Jets were going to have a chance, you'd have to look at their running backs. This is one of the few times, Sam, where I would encourage a team to actually run it more and maybe even try run, pass. Try it and over and over again and hope that Breece Hall breaks a big one. I unfortunately hate to say it, I don't see Dalvin Cook breaking the big ones anymore. He looks much slower. He had the fumble, of course. Mm-hmm. That Micah Parsons forced and recovered. That it feels like if Breece Hall can break a 50-yarder, they have a shot here with Zach Wilson. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, he'll hit this rhythm, play action pass. Garrett Wilson will make a guy miss and go for 68. We need 2 or 3 of those a game. We need a couple of it's kind of how I described it, I think, in the preview. If Zach Wilson can have a bunch of boots and a bunch of screens and a bunch of mindless type of plays, and only make him actually have to read it out 8 to 10 times a game, maybe you can manage, because then you only need a few good throws out of him. It's just such a fine line to make that all work, and it's not going to happen against this Dallas defense who did not allow the run game to do anything. And also, the Jets' offensive line is bad. Like, I'm curious if Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback here, we might be talking about 10 points for the Jets. The way that offensive line cannot block DeMarcus Lawrence, cannot block Micah Parsons. I don't know who's doing anything against this Dallas defense right now. Yeah,
so that's the thing, right? I thought both defenses actually played pretty well, but every other element favored Dallas. When you look at the other side of the ball on either side, like the Jets' offensive line simply doesn't function. Dallas's offensive line isn't bad. Dak Prescott opened the game for 10 for 10. They were having some joy in terms of offense. Zach Wilson couldn't really function that well, and the Jets couldn't run the ball because their offensive line is bad. So everything favored Dallas. And then when you start adding that on top of, when it was close, some calls went Dallas's way as well, right? Like there was an egregious roughing the passer call on Dak Prescott. The Jets were off the field on that play. Like that was a win. They were going to get off the field. John Franklin Myers gets through, hits him in the waist. Like this idea of where's the target area supposed to be for a quarterback? Can't hit him below the knees, can't hit him above the shoulder, got to hit him in this trunk area. He makes contact in the waist and then slides down in the course of the tackle and, wraps the legs. It's like textbook technique. And they're like, well, he ended up around his ankles, therefore he must have gone low. Throw the flag. So that ends up being a score in a play on a drive where the Jets defense held, down by the goal line, a tough situation, got themselves off the field. And there was another penalty, I think, on that drive before Dallas eventually punches it in. But
pass interference, I think, on third down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the football fan in me wants to see a close game. And when a team like the Jets are overmatched, and I'm kind of rooting for just, the drama and the closer game, those are tough ones, right? Those are tough. And if you're a Jets fan, you're watching this game like, man, we're hanging tough against what looks like a juggernaut here in Dallas. If we could just hold them to a field goal, and they do it, but there's the two penalties that those could be frustrating.
But, that offensive line for the Jets does look like a massive worry. I mean, Dwayne Brown looks spent at left tackle. Now, look, he's going up against some elite pass rushers at the moment, but he looks like he's done, which makes sense given his age. I mean, what is he, 38?
He was drafted in 2008.
Yeah. So he's, it makes sense for him to be pretty much done at this point. But you're right. Like it's all the focus is going to be on Zach Wilson because he's the quarterback and he's the guy being tasked with making the playoffs so that Aaron Rodgers can come back in like 6 weeks from his busted Achilles. But I don't know that he has a chance with this offensive line the way it's playing.
Dak Prescott played a good, efficient game. The EPA was high at one point. He did get away with a pick six, so I had to tweet out, there should have been a pick six in there. He throws one to Sauce Gardner, who had, 50 yards of green right in front of him. If he caught it, that would have affected the EPA. That's why I made that point.
Yeah, that was a weird play. He wanted to go there the whole way and hesitated, sort of talked himself out of it initially, and then went back to it anyway. And that's like, you can't, late to the flat is the cardinal quarterback sin. Can't do that. So you can't hesitate, then throw the same pass you wanted to throw in the first place. That just gave Sauce Gardner a read on it, and he should have caught it.
So that's the only real egregious mistake from Dak. He was really good spreading the ball around. CeeDee Lamb, fantastic. 7 first downs through the air. Really nice double move. That was Dak's probably his best throw of the day on a double move down the field. They did a nice job scheming CeeDee Lamb up as well. Brandon Cooks was hurt in this game, so you saw a little bit more Jalen Tolbert. Mm-hmm. I think he drew one of those pass interferences down the field. It was Dallas played the game that Buffalo should have played, Sam.
Yeah.
Right? Dallas played the game, not taking anything away from the Jets, but the Jets should be 0-2 if Dallas played the game where they ran the ball, they threw it underneath, they didn't turn it over, right? Dak gets away with that one pass that would have, kept the Jets in it, but just don't screw it up when you're facing Zach Wilson's Jets right now. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game. Dallas did it, and cannot rave about Micah Parsons enough. When you talk about the best defensive player, we're going to see Myles Garrett play tonight, and I thought week 1 Garrett was outstanding, right? I think Garrett's right there. Micah Parsons is right there. Nick Bosa, T.J. Watt. All those guys. But I think at the end of the day, you might be talking about Micah Parsons as the dude, right? Year 3, and he has been unstoppable when Dallas wants him to be unleashed and be unstoppable. And this is one of those games where you saw that.
Yeah. He's, as I say, there's probably 5 guys that have a best player in football, defensive player of the year candidacy that's a credible claim, and Micah Parsons is one of them. The forced fumble on Dalvin Cook, he just ran in, just ripped the ball away from him, and was unfortunate that his knee was in contact with Cook when he was on the ground recovering it, or it's a touchdown as well. He got up and housed it, just didn't get credited for it. He's insane right now.
All right, let's go. San Francisco 49ers 30, Los Angeles Rams 23. The Rams kick a late field goal to cover. What, Sam? What's going on?
The bettors want, the DGens want Sean McVay investigated over that.
Ridiculous. He's like, if we kick the field goal fast enough, we'll be able to get the onside kick and then throw it. Like, no.
It was only like, when there 4 seconds on the clock, like, it was.
Yes, of course. The game's over.
Yeah, it wasn't even a situation where you're like, there'll be like a second left and they'll get the ball back and, have a chance for a hell, whatever. Like, no, that was ending the game. Unquestionably.
That was one of those, when I was in college, I think it was one of those Monday night games when Al was doing the game and a team lines up for a field goal when they absolutely should have been throwing a Hail Mary or something. And Al was like, this is an interesting decision here to take the 3. I mean,
look,
anyway.
We joke around about it, but this is like a serious thing that this whole gambling world and the NFL being in bed with it opens up. I mean, there was a reason the NFL for decades wanted to stay as far as humanly possible away from any gambling reference, let alone connection. Because this kind of stuff is going to show up, and everybody who has bet money on this game is going to go, what the hell is this? This makes no sense in terms of winning and losing this game. The only thing this does is impact a bunch of people that bet money on it in one direction or the other. At the very minimum, that's a question that's going to get asked.
So other than that, it was a pretty fun game. The Rams hung tough, and look, week 1, we saw the Rams win. It took an otherworldly performance by Matthew Stafford, right? That I always rave about. The couple times a year, Matthew Stafford hitting tight window throws, and I wonder if that's just what the Rams are going to be this year. I mean, we'll talk about Puka Nacua in a minute, setting the rookie record or the record for most catches by a rookie in a game, and also by a player in his first 2 games, but. It's like Matthew Stafford. It's like a Detroit Matthew Stafford team, isn't it, Sam? Like, if he plays superhuman, they're tough. And he did for the first half plus, right? I was raving about him on Twitter. Yeah. And then has an interception in the comeback attempt, and things fall apart a little bit. But I think that's the Rams. They were always going to be the underdog here, and Stafford just can't play at that level all the time. And on the other side, this was the Deebo Samuel game. Last week, it was Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. This week, McCaffrey has his 116 yards on the ground, including a 51-yarder. Deebo Samuel, it was his time to shine as the do-it-all playmaker. You never know who it's going to be every week for the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, remember last week, the takeaway coming out of that 49ers-Steelers game, for me at least, was I was way too low on San Francisco going into the season. They are, for real, they are where everybody else had them in terms of penciling back in for the NFC title game. They're a contender again. It's sort of TBD what that means for Pittsburgh, but like the 49ers are legit. The fact that the Rams were able to hang as close as they were in this game, which, 7 points is probably fair in terms, it was a 1-score game to the 49ers. And the 49ers had to pull out, quite a few significant plays in key moments for that to be the case, right? Like just before the half, they didn't settle for a field goal. They went for a touchdown, sneaked it in, got a score on the board. That's a big play. Isaiah Oliver had multiple really key plays in this game. Knifed into the backfield on 4th and 1 to basically end it, late on before the Rams got their consolation score. But like it took a bunch of really important key plays for the 49ers to get a 1-score win against this Rams team. So again, my takeaway is kind of, the 49ers are legit, but this is an impressive game for the Rams to run them as close as they were over the course of 60 minutes.
Yeah. Also in a they were rushing pretty well. They were handling the Rams offensive line that we've had question marks about. So I'm impressed by the Rams keeping things close, but the Niners do feel like that team that is they're just too good. Brock Purdy did the distributing thing. Again, I don't think the grade's going to be great. He just gets the ball, throw it up to Juwan Jennings for a big play. The Niners are so good, you're not going to be able to judge their playmakers by their stats, I don't think, at the end of the year. Because like George Kittle might not have that many catches this year.
Yeah.
But one week he'll have 10 or 12. And every single week, it'll be someone new who's difficult to cover, or the game plan makes sense, or is going to run the ball like Debo, or whatever it might be. And that's the Niners right now, plus a very good defense. But I got to hand it to Stafford for carrying the Rams this far. Puka Nacua stepping up in the Cooper Kupp role. Tutu Atwell looking far more useful than he did in his first couple of years. The Rams are going to be at least fun here.
Yeah, and the other important part of that is, we've said for years this Rams offense basically goes as the offensive line goes. And in week 1, their offensive line played really well. And if you're looking at that, you're like, see, fits the template perfectly. This week, the offensive line actually kind of got its ass kicked. They only gave up 1 sack, but they gave up a ton of pressure. All 5 starters on the group might end up with in fact, 6 if you add the fact that they had guards, 2 guys split time at one of the guard positions. So all 6 members of the offensive line could end up with a pass blocking grade in the 30s. I mean, if you were told that heading into any Rams game, you would be like, offense gets nothing done, they get blown out.
Lions. I'm telling you, it's the Lions Stafford type of team right now, but like young and fun.
Right. But instead, they actually did have success. Stafford looked fantastic. The receivers did make some plays. Even their run game made a couple plays. Like, they got some stuff done despite that offensive line against the 49ers, who we know are really good. So it wasn't enough, but I came out of this game more encouraged by the Rams again, 2 weeks in a row than I was anything else.
We should try to go see them next Monday night in person. We should do that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm with you too. But Niners move to 2-0 here, 30-23 win over the Rams. We got a lot of people on YouTube here. Appreciate you joining us live on a Monday morning. Join us every week live on a Monday.
Did you see
hit that thumb? I'm trying to tell people to smash the thumbs up here, Sam. Don't interrupt.
People don't.
When I'm telling people the thumbs up is not matching the people in the chat. So we'd appreciate if you do that. Now you can go. Sorry. You need a better shtick. People don't respond to being told to smash the thumbs up button. Apparently, they don't do it. What would you say? What would you say to them right now?
You need a better shtick. I don't have one for you. I'm telling you, you just need a better one.
Okay.
Did you see George Kittle accidentally kneeing the ball to McCaffrey and turning what wasn't supposed to be one into a direct running back snap?
Did not see that play.
He was Kittle was in motion before the snap, and the timing got screwed up. So the ball got snapped, and he just kneed it on the way by. So McCaffrey, who was offset to the left, the ball ends up just getting kneed into his hands. It's just has to run forward for a couple of yards. But that could have been catastrophic. Ends up bouncing in their direction. Brock Purdy also had a couple of they reminded me a bit of Jimmy Garoppolo's Super Bowl. Remember, the deep pass just too far out of the reach, and that's the game? Purdy had a couple of deep targets.
Ayuk on one, right?
Yeah, he had a couple of deep targets that he overthrew, either one of which, could have been a big problem in this game. Ends up it didn't matter, but that was a blow. What about, so there's multiple records that Puka Nacua has now set.
Yeah, so it's most catches through 2 games.
Yeah.
And then 15 catches in 1 game, rookie record, I believe, right?
Right. And he's the only receiver in NFL history to start their career with at least 10 receptions in – was it 10 receptions in their first 2 games? Schefter had a tweet that he's the first player in NFL history with at least 10 receptions and 100 receiving yards in each of his first 2 games, and the 5th player in NFL history with at least 10 catches and 100 yards in each of his team's first 2 games of a season – joining, this is an interesting list, Miles Austin, 2010, Isaac Bruce in 1998, Cooper Kupp in 2022, and Andre Bad Moon Rison in 1994. It's a pretty good list, to be honest.
Fascinating list there. Who was it? Well, Puka, I was trying to think of something. Puka was, the first one you said, Miles Austin. He was really good for a period of time.
Yeah.
For Dallas. Puka was on my sleeper list back in our receiver rankings.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
You got to pull up that graphic. All right, let's go. Giants 31, Arizona Cardinals 28. Look, I want to apologize to Giants fans.
What?
I'm not apologizing for season takes or anything, but I've been a little negative on Twitter because they were they were looking pretty bad. There was a point where if you just take their last 2.5 quarters, they were outscored something like 95-7. Hadn't scored for the first 6 quarters of 2023.
Yeah.
But they did. They did come back. Daniel Jones breaks off a big run. Saquon Barkley finds the end zone a couple times. We got Jalen Hyatt picking up the, 58-yarder and another 30-yard. I mean, he's picking up big plays here. So the Giants found some life here after it looked disastrous. The Cardinals, with the worst roster in the NFL, get up big. 28-7 at one point? Yeah. 28-7. But the Giants come back and maybe salvage their season, Sam. So at least impressive comeback for the Giants. And the Cardinals, well done. Looking feisty, looking tough, but maintaining that 0-2 record and, that the draft pick.
Maintaining that 0-2 record. Yeah, 28-7 and then 31-28 as the result. Like this was as stark a game of two halves as you're going to see. First half looked like the Dallas game for the Giants. Like they couldn't get anything done. They were getting wrecked on defense. They couldn't get anything going on offense. Daniel Jones has a pass that hits his receiver that's dropped, ends up as an interception. Just everything was turning to crap for the Giants. It was the first time, you get these records, and most of the time it's like since 2006 or whatever. First time since 1934 that the Giants opened the season with 6 straight quarters without scoring. 34. Wow. That's pre-World War II. Like, that's insane. And that was
in the Great Depression hit their offense.
Right.
That year.
Yeah. Hard, apparently. So the first, 2 quarters, you're like, wow, are the Giants actually the worst team in the NFL? This is unbelievably terrible. And then the start of the second half, they I don't know if it's halftime adjustments or they just snapped themselves out of the funk, but things changed. Number one, their offense, sparked some life. They hit the deep bomb to Hyatt, Jalen Hyatt, to open the third quarter. They get a touchdown. Daniel Jones starts to get into a rhythm and actually starts making some passes, some nice throws out there. Darius Slayton, I thought, should have had a touchdown in the second half. That play where he tracked it incredibly well, over his shoulder, and is sort of leaning out of bounds as he grabs the ball. He only got 1 foot in, right? But doesn't a shin equal a knee, which equals 2 feet?
Yeah, the shin thing, I saw people asking about that. I mean, the shin should work, just like a wrist.
Yes.
A wrist works like an elbow.
Anything but a foot,
right?
Basically, is 2 feet.
Yes. The shin should work. And it's always you don't always get that, though, right? But, it should. The shin equals like a knee, which is 2 feet down. That should be a catch.
I don't think they challenged that, right, either. That should have been looked at, and that should have been a touchdown, I think. But anyway, they got it together in the second half. Daniel Jones made some beautiful passes like that down the field. He also hit a lot of throws over the middle that were impressive. And then maybe the other element is, the Cardinals' offense stalled. They didn't score in the second half. And honestly, one score, they win the game.
Yeah, it's one of those games where if it went back and forth,
yes,
and it ended up like there, it would kind of make sense.
Right.
But the fact that it was so one-sided for the Cardinals, James Conner breaks a beautiful run. Josh Dobbs played a really good game. He had that kind of a beast mode type of rushing touchdown there. And that's why people like Josh Dobbs, by the way, is you have games like this where he's just feisty, really efficient, moves with his legs. What'd you say?
Feisty, gritty.
Feisty, yeah. He has those games, man. He runs the offense and he could be effective. But yeah, it was weird that the game ended up one-sided on both ways. Saquon Barkley comes out of the game injured.
Didn't look great.
That's going to be a challenge here.
Yeah, that didn't look great at all. It's his ankle. He looked pretty pissed off. I don't know. That feels like you're going to be missing him for at least a little bit of time.
Yeah, on one hand, you see, running backs can be fragile, man. That's all. But you see his effectiveness, right? The couple touchdowns were good and impressive, and he is a part of this offense, right? I don't think good offenses ever run through the running back. Bijan Robinson might make me rethink that given the circumstances there, but I don't most of the time. Derrick Henry, maybe a little bit. Bijan Robinson maybe can do it. Nick Chubb with the Browns. You usually don't run the offense through the running back. When the Giants have been at their best, who was more effective yesterday, Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley? Who was more important? Of course, it's Daniel Jones. He's the one hitting 2 deep bombs to Jalen Hyatt and getting the ball to Darren Waller and getting the ball to Darius Slayton. And, oh, by the way, Saquon Barkley can be the other impact player on top of those. That's when the Giants will be at their best. And certainly you want Saquon Barkley doing that more than anyone else as far as the Giants depth chart goes. But this was more like what we expected from the Giants. Again, it's just odd that it took 6 quarters to get going. And now it's like, all right, now that's the offense we kind of saw in the preseason where they're distributing the ball and Jones is doing a really nice job as a runner and as a passer and much more effective. All that said, it's against a pretty weak Cardinals team.
Yeah.
It was due.
And I do think that the fact that their defense, now it held in the second half, but the fact that they were so exposed in the first half was more of that. Remember, we had that debate about their preseason and their training camp. Like, Darren Waller's unstoppable. The Giants' offense looks great. Jalen Hyatt scoring a deep touchdown every 3 seconds. Like, all right, how much of that is that's a really good sign for the Giants' offense, and how much of that is actually a pretty big red flag that their defense might not be good? Because of all the young players and all the turnover and all the changes. And their defense has not been able to stop anybody outside of the second half against the Cardinals offense that we expected to be terrible heading into the season. So that's a bit of a concern for them overall. But big comeback, important win for them, because if they'd carried on just getting annihilated the way they were, there would be crisis talks this morning in New York. So huge second half turnaround, and also getting the win I think was important as well. 2 other things. Barbarian watch. We got another sack. Dennis Gardeck now has 3 in 2 games, so on pace, ahead of pace for his double digits. Victor Dimukeje on the defensive line for Arizona played really well in this game. Now, the man only played like 20 snaps or whatever, but the dude was making some plays.
I appreciate that you they give the I love giving the good shout out to players that play well.
I simply wrote down one of my notes for this game was Victor Dimukeje a baller? Question mark? Because he was making some plays.
Good enough. Not gonna lie, even if he's balling out, I'm probably not gonna make that note because I don't want to have to mess up his name.
You have a pronunciation guide now. You should never be messing up another name.
There is a pronunciation Google doc out there. All right, 2 more games to discuss. Washington Commanders 35, Denver Broncos 33. Commanders move to 2-0. Broncos fall to 0-2. Some similarities to the last game we just discussed. A one-sided affair early, and then Washington brings it back. But then Denver hits a Hail Mary. Down 8, a Hail Mary to get within 2, but the 2-point conversion falls incomplete. Commanders pull it out 35-33. What you got here, Sam?
And a ridiculous Hail Mary. Yes. It was
way short.
Yeah. Well, not way short. Like a 60-something
Not way short,
yard
but short.
bomb.
It was a long pass. It was a few yards short of the end zone. You don't usually see one that lands short of the end zone becoming a touchdown.
Yes. Drops a couple of yards short of the end zone and then just sort of bounces over helmets and hands into the end zone where a guy grabs it, touchdown, whoa. Did you read the Seth Wickersham sort of profile piece on Sean Payton that came out a few weeks ago?
No, but you told me some of the highlights.
So it was very good. I mean, most of the things Seth Wickersham writes are very good and worth a read. But it was pretty fascinating as a portrait of the mindset of Sean Payton, because he is firmly convinced that the league has a vendetta against him and is actively working its way to ruin him. And to be fair, of all the people in the NFL, Sean Payton has more reason than most to suspect things like that, right? He was obviously part of the whole Bountygate thing. There was discussion at the time about whether they overreacted in terms of suspending him versus just Greg Williams, et cetera, the guy that set it up and orchestrated it. The Saints obviously are the victims of one of the worst non-calls in NFL history in the NFC Championship game with the no defensive pass interference where the dude just got taken out by Nickel Roby-Coleman. And, so it sort of makes sense that he at least has this thought, but it painted a picture of just how much that gnaws at him. it essentially made the argument that he stepped away from the Saints because he was fed up of Roger Goodell in the league, like fixing the game against him, and only came back to the Broncos because he was convinced that as the Waltons being the richest owners in the NFL by a mile, like the league would not be screwing them over, right? And as you know, I root for nothing in football more than the funniest possible outcome on all occasions, right? So nothing is more funny than, there was another element in this article that made a point of how important Sean Payton believed it was to get off to a good start. You know, he believed that's what helped him build the Saints, was they won their first few games, and you know that took all the pressure away, and then he could get on with the job of actually doing the job. So you add those two things together, and you've got now that the Broncos are 0-2, and that they got screwed at the end of this game by a crappy officiating no call, the 2-point conversion at the end of the Hail Mary. There were multiple instances of egregious defensive holding or pass interference, neither of which were called. And you're like, look, it's sad for Sean Payton, but that is objectively funny that a paranoid conspiracy theorist has now just watched his team get hosed out of a win by a no call from the officials.
That's your biggest takeaway?
That's what I got. That's my high-level takeaway from this game, is that is an objectively hysterical way for that game to end.
I've got some different takeaways.
Okay.
That's what that is. I mean, yeah. I didn't know the Sean Payton conspiracy theory thing. Obviously, I know the bad calls, but Marvin Mims averaged 56.5 yards per target, Sam. I suggested in the Twitter sphere multiple times now that he deserves 2 to 3 deep shots a game. He got 2 yesterday, one for 60, one for whatever else the other one was, 53. Yeah. Do more of that.
Yeah.
He only had 2 targets.
Right.
2 catches for 113 yards. So early on, the Broncos look like they're running away with this. And it was, that was, again, like the old school Russ. What I can't figure out here, Sam, is why there are pockets of the game that we say, this looks right. This looks like old school Russell Wilson-led team. There was 2 deep shots off of play action. He throws a beautiful deep ball. Marvin Mims is the beneficiary there. Marvin Mims creates big plays. They had some other big plays in there as well. Offense is cooking. They're running a little bit. Russ is making some plays with his legs. Probably taking too many sacks. I mean, he ends up getting sacked 7 times. He's just kind of running around taking some negative plays. But there are pockets of the game that look good. Hits a shallow cross for a touchdown. The Broncos are up big. And then but the consistency is not there. I don't know how to parse that out, right? Like, it's not everything's falling apart, everything looks bad. There are stretches of play that look good. So Russell Wilson, I feel, has gone almost from a guy that we used to call streaky, right? Where he would have full games where he looked great, and then one week he just looked terrible. Has his streakiness gone from a game to game to just like a quarter to quarter type of thing? That's what I'm feeling here watching this Broncos offense.
Yeah, I mean, I still think a big part of it is the receiver question. Like, Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are playing basically every snap. That makes sense. They're, the 2 obvious players in that offense to feature. But Brandon Johnson, and you can't criticize the man too much because he's the guy that caught the touchdown at the end. They gave them a shot to win it in the end zone. But Brandon Johnson,
50-yard touchdown, man.
Right, 30 snaps on offense. Little Jordan Humphrey, 19 snaps on offense. Marvin Mims, 14 snaps of offense, 2 of which
Give Mims more plays.
Yes, 2 of which were 50-yard touchdown bombs, or 50-yard bombs. Look,
I'm no genius, but at least try it a third time. Just see if they'll cover it the third time.
Even if you're not taking the shot the third time, like, why is this guy getting half the snaps of Brandon Johnson? You know what I mean? Like, this is off. Like that.
Yards per route run, 1 million. Try more. Do more.
So, again, small sample size performances do not necessarily scale up and mean that a guy is going to dominate with a bigger workload. But they should mean that if you have ineffective receivers taking snaps, we should at least play with this dynamic and see if we can move this distribution a little bit, and it has a beneficiary effect on the offense. Because right now, you've got Marvin Mims, who, remember, was one of these guys that everybody loved in the draft. Like, it didn't necessarily mean you were going to put him in the first round, but like everybody liked that guy. I didn't see a single scouting report that was like Marvin Mims is garbage and is never going to be a good NFL receiver. And you saw that about like, people said that about Jordan Addison, right? Or Quentin Johnston. Like there were more negative draft reports about those guys than there were Marvin Mims. So if everybody liked him, and right now everything we see from him is like a dominant deep play, let's give the man some more playing time and see what the problems are, rather than just assuming little Jordan Humphrey belongs in the offense more than he does.
Yes, please. I mean, look, so the Broncos get up 21-3, in part on the back of Marvin Mims being awesome. And the Commanders just start chipping away, man. They start chipping away, and it was a couple key plays. Like right before the half, Sam Howell hits this 35-yard cover 2 shot with about 20 seconds left in the half. So these are some of those underrated plays in the game. Right before the half, cover 2 shot. They were down 21-3. That ends up leading to a field. I'm sorry, they were down 21-11 at the time. Leads to a field goal to get within a touchdown. These little plays add up. One of the big plays was to tie the game. Sam Howell to Terry McLaurin, an absolute
incredible pass.
Dime. I mean, just throw, catch, just outstanding. And look, I talked about Sam Howell. There were plays early in the game. He is holding the ball way too long. The Commanders' pass blocking was not bad. They did not do a bad job. There was too many negative plays for Sam Howell. It was painful early watching him hold the ball. Not Justin Fields painful, but painful. But he got out of it, man. He threw the ball really, really well. If he could just cut back on those negative plays, Commanders might have something here. And he played really well down the stretch, had those plays that got back into him. The Commanders got the run game going. The defense stepped up at the same time. The Broncos offense decided to collapse. So really nice win here for the Commanders.
I'm starting to really like Sam Howell. I find him quite a fascinating quarterback because I can't think of too many players before who have been really quite good, but with one glaringly obvious flaw to his game, right? That's kind of where I'm landing right now with Sam Howell, which is almost everything he does is good, and he's capable of some spectacular stuff, but the sacks thing is terrible. I mean, he's bad at that. Like, taking too many sacks, inviting some bad ones, and turning way too many pressure plays into sacks. And those are negative plays that may or may not, influence the outcome of the game at the end of it. But it's like an obvious real weakness in his game right now. But everything else is actually pretty good and fun to watch. And it's working. I mean, that pass to Terry McLaurin was spectacular, incredible catch as well. The pass for Logan Thomas that ended up almost getting him killed with a terrible Kareem Jackson hit was a really nice play as well. He made a bunch of really nice plays in this game, and that was despite, he made it look worse, I think, at times, but Denver's pass rush showed up. Remember, like week 1, it was like, do the Broncos have any pass rush at all? They had multiple plays in this game where they did win and win early and win cleanly, and then there was some more in there as well where Sam Howell probably made it look worse than it was. But
pass protection was not perfect for the Commanders. But Sam Howell just got to get rid of the ball and not take some.
Yeah, I mean, there were also plays where it was literally a perfect pocket, and then he bailed out of the back end of it, and Randy Gregory chased him down from behind, turns it into a sack. It was a mixed bag, but there were plays in there where the pass protection was under strain, and Sam Howell ends up making plays anyway. I've come out of the first couple of weeks very impressed by Sam Howell, despite the obvious weakness in one specific area of his game.
Yeah, and look, I know analytically the sack rate is not generally something that you improve. You can. I mean, I think schematically you can help get rid of the ball and you can change it a little bit, but if he does improve that, Sam, the Commanders might have something there. Couple defensive linemen to highlight for Washington here too. Daron Payne had a huge game. Remember, he got paid this offseason. Maybe he might actually be better now than he's been over the last couple of years. Payne had some great big plays, and then Chase Young played football, man. Yeah. He played football.
Got a ton of pressure.
We played 40-something snaps with, what do we have? 5 BDs. Dude, I just clicked off it. 7 pressures, including negated plays. Chase Young. showing up here. So it's good to see him. Good to see Daron Payne. And that's the Washington formula. I know they ended up giving up a lot of points, but they settled down after the slow start. There's a Hail Mary in there. Washington defense can be really effective with that defensive line, especially with Chase Young back.
Yeah, he had the best pass rush win rate in the game on either side of the ball. 26.7% is a crazy high number and really impressive first being back. By the way, the other thing, the defensive version of Marvin Mims for Denver, I think, is Nick Bonito, who has been a productive situational pass rusher. And last week, when they had no pressure whatsoever, basically wasn't on the field. This week, he had 24 pass rushes and led the team both in pressures with 5 and pass rush win rate at 25%. So they've already, they've already shown that they have recognized and are willing to scale up a guy's workload if there's an area of weakness. Well, Marvin Mims is the obvious corollary to that on offense of receiver is not necessarily a strength right now. You've got a guy tearing it up in limited snaps. Let's crank that upwards.
Just a couple second-round model guys for the Broncos who need more time, Sam. That's all they are.
Right.
All right, let's wrap it up with Sunday Night Football. Double check, make sure I didn't miss any games. But Sunday Night Football, Miami Dolphins 24, New England Patriots 17. Dolphins move to 2-0. Patriots fall to 0-2. One of the most fun finishes, weird finishes, unfortunate finishes because it was fun that you'll see. Pass short of the sticks to Hunter Henry. He's about to go down. He laterals it to guard Cole Strange. I don't know who he lateraled it to, but Cole Strange said, "That's my ball." Yeah. He went up and got it and then tried to tried to gut it out for a first down, needed a couple yards, came just short. Terry McAuley, just like he's the guy, the Saturday Night Live people that are just, the Debbie Downer or whatever. It was initially a first down, and Terry's over there like, "Nah, I don't think he's got it, guys. This game's gonna end." And we're rooting for excitement here.
That is the classic example of a play where if it's cool enough, let it go. Let it go. It was close enough, right? It was an amazing play, and it was close enough. Who cares about the rules? Just give him, there's wiggle room in this, right? We didn't look too close at the one shin equals one knee equals 2 feet thing. Why do we care about the rules right now? Let it stand.
The cool rule.
Mm-hmm.
The cool rule. High level, it felt like Miami was in control of this game. New England hung tough, and they, a couple late touchdowns to keep it close. But Miami's offense, man, Tua just precision once again for the most part. Did throw a bit of a chuck into kind of a whatever it was, chuck and duck to Christian Gonzalez for an interception short. But other than that, man, Miami just feels fast, obviously. But everything's fast. Everything's quick, right? The motion is quick. The motion is right before the snap where you can't adjust to it. The players are fast. They're quick. Tua, the quick release. It's all fast, man. And it is so tough for defenses to account for. So they did a nice job, as always, creating mismatches, getting the ball out of Tua's hands extremely quickly, and just moving the ball offensively.
Yeah, this was an interesting game because I think it started off as quite a close back and forth that was schematically very interesting. Then it got way away from New England and reached the point where late in the game, I think Chris made this comment on the broadcast, like the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel must be asking himself, like, how the hell does New England have a chance of winning this? I mean, they have the ball late in the game where that lateral rugby play happened. Like, that's the drive to tie it up or whatever. Like, the Patriots shouldn't have been anywhere near this game by the end of it, and yet they were. But early in the game, the Patriots open up with basically that Brian Flores defense that the Vikings were running against Philadelphia for similar reasons. They were, like, running this 3-safety look and inviting the run from Miami because they didn't want to get gashed by Tyreek Hill in the passing game and 466 yards and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of working. Like, they were at least making Miami get success by being patient and drawing it out, and all that kind of stuff. And then when New England got the ball, like, they were getting the ball out quickly as well. They were having some success. And then Bradley Chubb forces a fumble on Douglas, the receiver, the rookie receiver, gets a turnover, and that changes the whole outlook of the game. Like New England's offense doesn't function after that. Did they end up getting Douglas back on the field, or did he just get benched?
I don't think so.
That?
I think that was it for him.
Dude, I think that's shooting yourself. Like, that's cutting off your nose to spite your face. I think that's Douglas,
way too old school, man. Even Chris mentioned it on the show. A guy fumbles, like, all right, you're benched.
Right.
It's like you're actively making the team worse.
Force that. Yeah, exactly. It's cutting off your nose to spite your face. You are voluntarily making yourself worse to make a point. 4 snaps for Douglas. One of them, that was a nice play. And look, every receiver that's played football at any level has done that, right? Where you just didn't know there was a guy chasing you down from the other angle, and he hits the ball before you knew a hit was incoming. And as much as that's why they preach 5 points of contact, high and tight, when you're running and you don't think there's a hit incoming, you just involuntarily relax that a little bit. You don't have it as high and tight as you should do. And sure, that's the point Bill Belichick is trying to make, and it's an important one. But, dude, at some point, people make mistakes. Cut him some slack. He's also one of the few guys you have that might make a play for you, and the game's getting away.
But the fumble is just a weird one, because if you blow a coverage, are you out for you don't get benched just for one blown coverage or for one dropped pass, or I know whatever it is, man. It's just it doesn't mean you're going to fumble the next 3 times you have the ball either. It's like, chances are you got your fumble out of your system, and you're going to fix it, and you're going to be a good player.
Yeah, and look, maybe you can make the argument, sit him down for a while so he knows, like, make the point. Yeah. But late in the game, put him back on. Like, now you need him again. So you made your point.
Demario Douglas has been fantastic during training camp, and with how often New England's throwing the ball underneath, that's the type of player you need with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Because the Patriots were not completing anything. There was a point in the game where I don't know if it ended up when it changed, but Mac Jones was 0 for 7 on passes, 10-plus yards, and 18 for 18 underneath. It was very just a dink and dunk type of passing game for New England. Mac Jones throws a pick to Xavier Howard when he does try to get down the field. The downfield passing game was not good for New England, but they hung tough, man. It ended up being back and forth, even though Miami, they were up 21-3 at the half. I thought Tua was just outstanding in the 2-minute drill just before the half, hits Braxton Berrios with one of the throws of the game, steps up, hits him with a nice in-stride 18-yarder. So Miami's got it in hand. New England fights back, but then it's Raheem Mostert, right? 43-yarder to go up 2 scores in the second half. Mostert ended up having some really nice carries in there. And again, it's just more speed for Miami. They're not just fast at receiver. Mostert might actually be the fastest player on the team, former track star.
Yeah, I was just looking up the Mac Jones depth stuff. Through 3 quarters, it was 18 of 18, short of 10 yards, and then 0 for 7 above 10 yards. For the game, it ended up being 25 of 26 for 161 yards, short of 10 yards. And then above 10 yards late in the game, he got a little bit back. He was 6 of 15 for 70 yards with a touchdown and an interception. So very, underneath, Mac Jones was efficient, was delivering where it needed to be, but basically every shot he took wasn't happening.
Patriots did not have a reception longer than 14. 14, Sam. So you had a couple 10-yard passes in there, but they didn't have a completion longer than 14 yards, including catch and run. And he dropped back, almost 50 times. So, yeah, New England's got to find a way to add some kind of explosive element. And look, they had some of those plays against Philadelphia last week. But, this week it was not good. Miami did a nice job taking away.
They did. And it was one of those sort of situations, I think, where it started to compound on itself. Like Miami's defense started really flying around the field, getting really aggressive. And the Patriots didn't have the deep threat to back it off. They couldn't scare them back off the line of scrimmage. So guys like Andrew Van Ginkel is flying around the line. They're starting to stack the line with 6 guys, just really threaten things. And the Patriots just couldn't back them off.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is New England's offensive line, having Calvin Anderson at right tackle, Verdarian Lowe with I think it was his first NFL start, former undrafted free agent or 7th rounder. Part of it's just not trusting those guys against, what can be a pretty good Miami pass rush. The one other interesting thing to highlight here, the field goal block that New England had, Brendan Schooler using short motion on the defense to get a running head start on the field goal, gets a block. They try it again later. Chris highlights maybe this distracts the kicker. He's worried about it. He ends up pulling it. So that's one of the reasons why it was close. Miami misses 2 field goals, one of which was blocked with a unique defensive structure there.
Well, not just that. I mean, if you start, you ask, like, how does a game like this end up close despite the feels being Miami is just destroying them on both sides of the ball? Well, one of the ways it happens is a sequence of ridiculous plays all going in one direction. So, New England had a few really high leverage plays that they got the better of. At one point, they showed this heavy blitz at the line, knowing the Tua was just going to dump it right over the top, and then Kyle Duggar gets back, gets his hand on it, breaks it up.
It's a good play.
Like, stops a touchdown, really. Like, it was like a cover 0 blitz that if you get the pass off the back of it, it's probably a touchdown with the speed they have. He breaks that up. The very next play was that blocked field goal that you're talking about. So back-to-back plays, we go from maybe a touchdown to actually we just blocked the field goal. On New England, they had a touchdown with probably multiple illegal elements to it in terms of a guy blocking downfield, an illegal player downfield. Like, they get a touchdown that, no questions asked. It's week 2. Let's not worry about it. They obviously the Tua interception, like Christian Gonzalez was essentially playing safety on that play, by the way. Like, New England, another element of this is the Patriots were really banged up at corner, had to go pretty deep into the bench. Christian Gonzalez is playing like a cover 2 safety, and it's just a badly underthrown pass by Tua to Tyreek Hill. Really nice play by Gonzalez to make the play, but turnover there, and then the 3rd and 1 play, Tua drops the snap before the missed 55-yarder. So 4 or 5 plays all stacking up in New England's favor, and that's how you end up with a drive to potentially go and try and tie it.
Yeah, that was a great play. Gonzalez was playing pure safety, flips his hips, goes up and gets it. Yeah, I'm watching it right now.
Yeah.
You got the clicker. Clicker, watch it. That was a great play.
But going back to that blocked field goal, so nobody has essentially seen this before, and they're like, "Oh, is this like a special teams version of like the Miami motion? These getting Tyreek Hill a running start at the snap." And I mean, there's a reason that this doesn't happen every single play, because you're not in control of the snap the way you are on offense, right? And it's almost certainly something that they saw on tape to be able to time it up that way, because if you watch what he's doing, he's not timing the snap. Like, he's not looking at the center. He's not looking at the ball. He's watching the kicker's sequence, right? He's obviously timed the kicker's sequence so that when he makes this specific move, now I've got 2 seconds before the ball is snapped. And that's what he's timing, which is good. I mean, it's impressive and it worked. And you can, like, the kicker can't necessarily screw with his sequence in a game, but he can screw with it week to week. They can change things week to week. So I don't think you're going to – you might see a few other teams try this, but I don't think this is going to become like this cheat code on special teams, because like the offense can simply mess with the timing of the kicker and the kick and the snap and all those kinds of things. And that's the kind of thing where like, he's running laterally for 10 yards, and if that changes, he has to stop dead. It neutralizes it. So really amazing play. Great bit of prep that they almost certainly saw something on tape and they exploited it in the game. I just think that that's probably pretty much a one-time deal.
But it might be done. So Miami moves to 2-0, first place in the AFC East. Patriots fall to 0-2 for the first time since 2001. And then in week 3, they played the Jets, and Tom Brady came in. No, it was week 2. Forget it. So 0-2 for the Patriots. Rough start. They got the Jets next week, though, with Zach Wilson. That's who Belichick and the Patriots have pretty much owned. So
yikes.
Would have been more fun with Aaron Rodgers coming in. We're going to say that every week. This matchup with the Chiefs would have been more fun with Aaron Rodgers than Zach Wilson. Credit to Miami, man. They look fast. They're playing fast. They're playing quick. If Tua stays healthy, man, they do look legit. Second straight year they've started out hot. So
yeah, and I think, I mean, schematically they seem to be winning. Like they've been, I think, ahead of the curve on in both games. But that list of whatever it was, 4 or 5 individual plays that went against them, and in several cases, unfortunately, in this game, for them to come out and still win is is a really big statement. On the road with 4 or 5 big plays bouncing against you, to still be the clear better team and end up with a victory is an important thing.
Sorry, that's another factor. Miami's 2-0 on with they haven't played at home yet.
Right.
They haven't even had the September Miami advantage. New England's 0-2. They've played 2 home games. Now, 2 good teams, Eagles and Dolphins, but the Patriots have 6 home games left. The Dolphins have 6 road games left. Just another factor here when you look at their records to start the season.
No, Miami have done this looking the better team, being impressive, and haven't had the advantages go their way. They've actually battled against that stuff, which really bodes well for them as we go through the season.
All right, man, it's week 2 in the books. Other than 2 Monday Night Football games here, we got the Panthers, Saints, and Steelers, Browns, couple division matchups here tonight. And then you'll be back tomorrow to recap all those here on YouTube. You and I will be back on Wednesday with more PFF NFL podcast. We appreciate everybody tuning in on YouTube. And somebody said, why should we give you a thumbs up? Because we're spending 2.5 hours going game by game at 7 a.m. on a Monday for you. We're doing it all for you. So if you're so inclined, please click the button that has a thumbs up on it on your way out.
Okay.
Is that better?
Begging, yeah. It's all right.
Do you have anything else?
No, we took us 2.5 hours. We're done. We're
overtime. My kids are outside waiting to barge in the door.
Yeah.
So thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you either tomorrow or Wednesday, PFF NFL Podcast.